Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Welcome to the Audit and Finance Committee 2023 Agency Budgets Review. Tonight, we'll have our department heads who will be asked a series of questions related to your budget and are expected to answer as completely as you can. If any answers to our questions cannot be provided at this time, then please indicate when you are able to provide them to the committee. Legislators have been provided your written responses to our budget information request letter, and we thank you for your cooperation in providing them. However, in order to complete a more thorough examination of your budget, it may be necessary to forward you some additional questions after tonight's hearings. For example, there may be a budgetary or a spending trend question not asked at this session, but will be forwarded directly to your department by staff for a response. And just so everyone knows, this is the order that we're going to be taking tonight. We're going to start with the county executive. We'll then move to management and budget. We'll then go to the county clerk. We'll then go to the coroners, to the comptroller's office, and to the district attorney. All right? And right now, I would like for majority council to take attendance.
Sure, Madam Chairwoman. Ms. Willingham?
Present.
Peter?
Here.
Bergdorf?
Here.
Clay is excused. Grimm?
Here.
Ray Joyce?
Present.
Oh, there you go. Lakakis? Here. Mayo?
Here.
And Brewski is excused. 7 present, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay, we have 7 present members of the Audit and Finance Committee. I'll just take a chance to see how many other members we do have here. Mr. Beston?
Here.
Ms. Chapman is excused. Mr. Clay is excused. Mr. Cleary?
Here.
Mr. Collins? Mr. Camiso?
Here.
Ms. Cunningham? Mr. Demolowitz? Mr. Drake? Mr. Epicoro? Mr. Ethier?
Question. Are you polling the whole legislature?
Yes, I am,
Why is that for?
because I can.
Well, I also can ask why you're doing it.
Because I can.
You doing it to embarrass the ones that are not here?
No, we're gonna move right on along.
All right, go ahead, I'm
Okay,
here.
Mr. Feeney?
Here.
Mr. Fine?
Here.
Mr. Grimm?
Here.
Mr. Andrew Joyce?
Here.
Mr. Ray Joyce?
Here.
Mr. Kuhn? Ms. Lockhart? Ms. Lockhart? Mr. Moriello? Mayo is here. McLaughlin is out. McLean Lane? Mr. Miller? Mr. O'Brien? Mr. Purley? Mr. Peter is here. Ms. Plotsky?
Present.
Mr. Reedy? Mr. Reinhardt? Mr. Ricard? Mr. Simpson? Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Tunney? Mr. Ward? Ms. Whalen? All right, thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on along now, and we will start.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question, quick clarifying question, Lynn?
Is that to Ms. Ricard?
It is.
Okay.
On the packet that we got in the beginning of the year, the second budget meeting was scheduled on the 19th of December, and in the packet that you gave us, it was scheduled on the 12th. I just want to clarify which it is. In the beginning of the year, we got a whole year schedule, and I believe it was the 19th that was called out on it, but your packet said the 12th. Just before we go into December, I just wanted to... Oh, okay. Well, be sure. Thanks.
All right. This evening, we do have Deputy County Executive, Mr. Lynch.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. We do have some questions for you. What I would like to know is, first, before I start out, are there any questions from our members? And what we'll start with, I'm going to ask Mr. Lynch to give us a presentation.
Absolutely.
Okay? And we're ready to start. And if any members have any questions, just let me know. Okay, thank you very much. And Ms. Whalen, okay, I'm working. Really good. Really good. Mr. Lynch?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the legislature. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm here with several members of the County Executive's Office, accompanied to my right, Mr. Riley, our Commissioner of Management and Budget, and I want to commend him and his team for putting together a very strong executive budget. And after the series of audit and finance meetings, we hope that you, as a body, will support it in its entirety. We're excited about this budget. It positions us well to be able to handle any possible economic downturns that we may face in next year and the upcoming years. As you all know, inflation is at a 30 to 40-year high. Economic downturn is consistently being projected by all leading economists. This budget looks to continue our investment in our economic successes, as well as leveraging the strong financial position we are presently experiencing. So I want to get into some of the numbers of the budget. Total budget is $756.8 million, which is a 5.9% increase over last year. A lot of that is attributed to inflation. Our cost of doing business, the cost of commodities has increased, as everyone is well aware. There is a 2% non-union pay increase contained within this budget. And there are other investments that we are requesting that be made into the county, which I'll dive a little deeper into in a little bit. The levy remains flat from last year, $99,752,250. The effective tax rate because of that is reduced to $3.45 per 1,000 in assessed value. That's what it was last year, down to $3.17 this year. It's an 8.1% reduction year over year, something to be very proud of. This is down from $3.95 back in 2014. So over the last 10 years, we have seen a 19.75% reduction. That puts us at 9th in New York State as having the 9th lowest effective tax rate. Those are stats that are confirmed by our Office of State Controller. So this is not a one-year event. This is several years that have gotten us to this position, and I want to commend the executive. I also want to commend the legislature for being a part of those successes. Our sales tax forecast is at $326,050,000. That's a 7.89% increase from last year. And now I want to take a transition here a little bit and take a few moments of reviewing some of the key budget items contained in the 23 executive budget. And simply stated, we are investing back into Albany County. We believe that this is a smart and responsible way of going about county government. We've made several investments, and I want to walk through some of those right now. Our first investment is a $4 million investment into our Sustainable Technology and Green Energy Act, the STAGE Act. This is the funding that follows up from the STAGE Act law, which you all, legislature had passed earlier this year. It serves as a proactive business growth and attraction fund to encourage the growth of sustainable industries such as offshore wind, green hydrogen, and battery storage here in Albany County. I hope you all know, and if you don't, I would take an opportunity to explain, if any of you have questions, some of the successes that we've seen in these industries. Our ports are really a prime location for attributing to a lot of the growth here with the offshore wind successes. Plug Power at Vista Boulevard and Slingerlands in the town of New Scotland and Bethlehem, respectively, is going to generate in the next year 1,300 net jobs for hopefully be filled by Albany County residents. That's something, again, that the time is now to invest into these industries, and this does exactly that. Our second investment is $3 million into what we call the Albany County Improvement Initiative funding. The objective here is to fund projects and programs that will have transformative impacts on communities within the county. The funds will be awarded through a competitive application process, and we will use a similar structure that we set up for our ARPA funding. Third investment is $3.8 million budgeted to pay off the remaining previously amortized retirement contributions from 2014 to 2016. By paying this off in a lump sum early, we will save ourselves from having to make future payments for the next 3 years, and will save us from paying additional interest that would otherwise accrue. So from a cash flow basis, that will give us for the next 3 years $1 to $1.5 million of cash flow. And again, being fiscally prudent and responsible will save us about $500,000 in additional interest that we would have paid over those 3 years. Other investments that we're making, $250,000 in operating expenses for the Advanced Albany County Alliance, $250,000 in operational funding for Albany County Land Bank. As I indicated earlier, a 2% raise for all non-union positions. This is an investment into our most important resource here in the county, and I believe that's our employees. And that's continuing to be our goal, to make sure that we can invest in them. For what it's worth, negotiations are ongoing with our union workforce and have been ongoing for the last year to two. We're hopeful that we'll have a resolution that we'll be presenting to you over the next several months of those labor contracts. Briefly talk about the executive department budget. There are two minor changes here. Otherwise, the status quo from last year. The first is simply a renaming of a title, the Director of Policy title, to now the Director of Policy and Intergovernmental Affairs. No salary adjustment other than the 2% cost of living. Secondly is the creation of a $50,000 non-personnel line. This is a graduate fellowship program, and I'll discuss that a little bit more shortly. So I want to shift gears here to workforce challenges. Our comprehensive workforce development plan, which you heard a lot about last year, and I spent some time going through that, continues to work hand in hand with our equity agenda. So I want to kind of walk through a little bit of where we are, some of the issues that we're seeing, and how we may be able to get out of them. Recruitment and retention continue to be a huge issue surrounding overall staffing issues throughout the county. Most departments over the next couple of weeks are going to come to you and say that they have vacancies and there's shortages of their workforce. And we're working with them and creating a strategy to try to address those department by department. Albany County needs to remain flexible and nimble if we're going to deal with these issues and do so effectively. So we have started to take some measure to address this. Last year I presented to you all about some ideas designed to retain some of our highly skilled workforce. And what I'm referring to is the adjustment in our longevity pay scale. It had been 36 years to any adjustment to that longevity pay scale. And I thank you all for approving that budget and allowing that to go into play. Adjustments to our department heads and deputies, which brought some pay equity amongst the ranks, some pay equity across similarly situated officials throughout New York State. We increased health care benefits for our employees. This, I can't say enough about what this means to our investment into our workforce and their families. And we also adopted a hybrid work model. Not all departments are utilizing this hybrid work model, but it provides for those departments an opportunity that when work relates to a remote world, the opportunity to provide some work-life balance for our employees. So that's what we've done. This year, we've also come to you about passing a residency waiver. And we're already, and you did so, and thank you for carrying that, thank you for bringing that through the legislature and getting it passed. And it's a 2-year waiver, but we're already seeing an uptick in applicants received for vacancies. So that immediately is showing a direct result in how we can recruit. This next year, through this budget, I want to address some of the additional strategies that we have for recruitment. We're requesting an enhanced pay line within the management and budget. This will allow us to pay for mandatory out-of-work title, or out-of-title work. It's not a bonus. This provides flexibility to our departments to provide for the work that we're asking our employees to do. When we have vacancies, someone's got to do the work. We can't just let it sit idle. We need to get that work done so we can provide the services to our residents. So if we're calling upon an employee to do something, we need to pay them. This provides the flexibility to do so. We're also asking that you approve an accrued liability line. Some of employees that have been here for a period of time have accrued 13 weeks of sick time that we need to wait before we can fill those positions, those 13 weeks. In critical positions in county government, we cannot wait a quarter of a year to fill a position. This would allow us to show some flexibility to tap into that fund, pay that line out, and immediately try to get a qualified candidate into that position. We are also creating some new positions through the comprehensive workforce plan that will work across department lines to create efficiencies and savings. And I won't dive into them, but just three by title are a grants coordinator, which will track our grants and make sure that we're effectively utilizing the funds that we're receiving from federal and state governments and other sources. A GIS coordinator in our real property department that will create countywide organizational structure for GIS platforms, and an information security analyst, which will be in our IT department. This will evaluate existing policies and protocols, identify weaknesses and threats. You'll hear from IT, you'll hear from Commissioner Riley on some of the significant challenges and concerns that we have surrounding cybersecurity. So I won't dive into that. We have other recruitment strategies as well. HR is launching, or hopes to launch, a program called Planning a Successful Future Program. This will serve as an early action recruitment effort for county and would prepare graduates for workforce entry by targeting high school students who do not have immediate plans to attend college, and will create a future pipeline of county employees. It's essentially a feeder program to fill labor positions. So equipment operators in water purification district to CNAs at Shaker Place Nursing Facility. We're looking to match employable county residents with sustainable county jobs. So this is just a little more on this. We recruit them, we pay them while they're here as a trainee, we pay for them to get the certification that is necessary to do that job, and then we employ them. And it's a track right out of what would be a non-employable individual who has no plans of moving on to college, to get them into the workforce and hopefully be able to establish themselves and be able to provide for themselves and their families. We're also requesting increased funding for recruitment efforts, $20,000 in our HR budget for marketing and advertising of vacancies that are created. The idea is to provide more direct resources towards our recruitment efforts. We also allow affirmative action the opportunity to use some of these funds to target and attract a more diverse workforce. And lastly, we have, this is something that is located within the county executive's budget, is a $50,000 funding for a graduate fellowship program. This is a leadership public service opportunity that aims to attract highly talented, diverse graduate students to local government. It's an alternative pathway of recruitment. We're doing this right now. We used a portion of funds from the executive. We've brought on two graduate students currently from Rockefeller. They're working with our mental health department and our CYF department. They're providing incredible resource to those two departments on how we could streamline our government services. So we're immediately seeing the result. These are highly educated, trained young women. They happen to both be women that hopefully after the end of this fellowship will join us in employ with county government. These are many strategies that we're looking to implement to address some of the workforce concerns. As employment trends change, we need to be ready to do so as well. It's vital that we remain flexible and willing to make the necessary adjustments. Our comprehensive workforce plan continues to monitor and make recommendations that are necessary to ensuring that our workforce can continue to provide the necessary services that a lot of our residents rely on. This is a strong, balanced, fiscally sound, and prudent budget. I ask that you support it. I'm looking forward to our departments presenting to you all over the next couple of weeks in support of that. And at this time, I'll open up the floor to any questions concerning the executive budget.
First of all, I just want to say thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
It was pretty thorough. It answered most of the questions that we had down here. But I will open the floor up now to, and I'll start with Mr. Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Deputy County Executive. It's more just some clarifying questions, nothing really in-depth to it. I know you sort of mentioned the CWDP a little bit, but is there anything specific you really, like, throughout the budget that you really sort of did and elevated that you want to sort of enlighten us on?
So the creation of new positions is one of them. I mentioned a few, 2 or 3 of them. I mean, this is as I explained last year, this is a working document, it's a work in progress. So we consistently meet with our departments to see what's changing. Last year, you heard me talk about, how outdated titles were. Having certain titles in today's day and age and in today's workforce just didn't make sense. So they are highlighting new concerns, and then we go to the drawing board with them to try to create opportunities that may assist them. So, Dave, I don't know if we've made any changes during this current year of title changes, but what we've placed in this executive budget is a number of different strategies by creation of new positions that are a direct result of that ongoing work of that workforce plan.
Okay. And is there anything like where you're noticing individual specific departments that really need sort of an overhaul? Because I know you talked about the 2%, across the board, but is there, like, the Finance Committee will have to see, obviously if there's adjustments to the budget and things like that, is there any place you're really sort of starting to see this and that we should sort of be aware of as we're, going through next year? From
a pay equity standpoint?
Yeah. If not, that's fair enough.
Yeah, it's a tough question because there's ample opportunity right now in employment in state agencies. We unfortunately are housed in the seat of state government or in the county of state government. We lose a lot of good employees across all different departments to state agencies. It's unfortunate. I don't know that this county government can afford to match the salaries that sometimes are offered in those respective state agencies. What we have, though, seen is individuals that have left and then asked to come back. Because the grass isn't always greener. You're really able to affect some change here in the county level that unfortunately may not provide the same opportunity in some of those state jobs. So I think that there's that going for us. I promote that. I try to promote that through our commissioners and our department heads that, if you want to have direct impact on people that you live in the same community with, this is where you can do that. And there's a value to that is beyond just dollars and cents.
Fair enough. Madam Chair, if I could. 2 other quick clarifications. With the STAGE Act, which obviously we passed and the legislature is supportive, we talked about the jobs created, and I think it's going to be very important, but how are we going to view a success, right? Like, just because a project gets county money, it doesn't guarantee county residents get the job. It doesn't mean that there's necessarily the secondary economic development. So my question is, like, when the state does it, they do it by jobs creating. Now, that's fine because it's a bigger catch entity, but most of our revenues come from property tax, sales tax, etc. So how are we going to capture a success with this money, and which I think we're all for, but how are we going to make sure that we're getting the bang for our buck with those that accept it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the promotion of the opportunity, the employment opportunity is vital for a starting point. Offshore wind, there will be, and there already is, hundreds, if not billions of dollars of investment. There's going to be the creation of some well-paying jobs right here in our South End and down at the Port of Queens. It's vitally important that we do our best as a county government to try to recruit locally. Are there going to be individuals that come outside the county to work in those jobs? Absolutely. But hopefully there's a trickle-down effect of some positive economic impact here. The Plug Power investment is extremely sizable. 1,300 jobs is tough to wrap your head around. It just seems like a number, but those jobs are real manufacturing jobs, some white collar, but mostly manufacturing, that can have direct impact on so many our individuals that live here in the county or in the capital region. So I don't know if I'm directly answering your question of where, I don't know what metric we would use to, and how we would define success.
I suppose.
But right now, I'm sorry.
No.
Right now, I think that the creation of the opportunity is already a success. What we do with that opportunity and filling those potential jobs is, I think, somewhat on us to make sure that we're getting that word out and providing the necessary resource to individuals that want to seek these good-paying jobs and stay here in the county.
Is it possible to, if some folks get funding or this and whatever, for the first 3 years they're in operation, we get a report with how many jobs are with Albany County residents, not by names or anything like that, but very simple, like, and we understand that obviously things change as employment goes through, but at least for the initial thing, I think it would be helpful to know, okay, for Plug Power, 25% of the jobs created were Albany County residents, or 50%, or 60%, or 5%, right? Which I think talks about the continued investment. I would just request something like that.
No, I think that's fair, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And also, we're working with Plug Power and the town supervisors on putting together a community benefit program that will make sure that they're doing their part as a resident, as a entity, a company here, and make sure that we are attracting here first. We are getting into the schools and providing a olive branch of some sorts, and make sure that the folks know about them, and can if interested, try to move in a direction of seeking employment through them. So we're working with them. They are very open, and they understand the commitment that we have, obviously, to this county, but they're committed, just as committed to this county. They could have gone anywhere in the world to relocate headquarters, literally anywhere in the world. The fact that they're staying here and building out that park is an incredible representation of their commitment to this area. And I'll say that the county executive and CEO, Marsh, have struck up a great relationship throughout the course of the last year, and I feel, and I know, based upon those conversations, that they stand committed to making sure that they're providing the best opportunities for our residents.
Understood. And just one final one, if that's okay, Madam Chair?
Let me just ask this question.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any questions? Let me go to.
Well, if he has one more, I would yield to Mr. Peters for his last question.
Just finally on the enhanced pay, which I understand and it makes sense, I'm not against it. How are you going to assess who gets what pay? And because when I was in the city, it was a little convoluted. We had to do a percentage of different duties and then get it checked with E&A and stuff like that. And I know it's different, but I would just be interested in how you're going to assess it. That way we make sure people aren't just giving extra dollars to friends or whatever else.
Yep. No, fair question. It's going to be a direct conversation between department head and commissioner of management and budget to establish what the pay rate should be for that particular individual, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. You're going to have individuals that are working up and taking on additional responsibilities that are outside their title upwards and also downwards. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. So each position is going to be a unique situation for that department. It will be discussed with management and budget, and an agreed upon amount of pay rate will be established through that process.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Bergdorf.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Dan, I think we have, is there 17 collective bargaining agreements? Is that the right number? I'm looking at Jeff. 19. How many do we have agreements with at this point in time?
So on this line of question, I don't know if this is the appropriate.
Well,
forum, but
I'll pose a broad question.
Okay.
Okay. The agreements that you have with the various unions, are those raises reflected in your ask for 2023?
No.
They're not.
Not on the, go ahead.
Any agreements that we have in place at this time are reflected in the budget. The vast majority of bargaining units are not in agreement right now.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, what is the potential accrued cost of the unresolved collective bargaining agreements, which if you came to fruition in 2023, we would have to enact probably in a retroactive basis. And where's that money gonna come out of this budget?
Wanna go?
I can, and kind of to the deputy's apprehension before, I don't necessarily want to fully play exactly how much that pot is and exactly
I'm
where
not
it stands.
asking you
To
for
give that
obvious
away.
reasons.
But yes, we have war gamed out multiple scenarios, we kind of know where we're likely to land with the unions, and we have budgeted appropriate reserves in there to handle that.
So it's in there?
It's in there.
Okay, all right. Question number one, that was question number one. Question number two. When we adopted the stage program, I was very supportive of it, but I made one observation, which I'm hoping you can tell me is not going to be continuously true. I see you're putting $4 million into the stage program. What happens if there are other businesses that don't fit the stage criteria that come to Kevin O'Connor and the other, and our other financial disbursement mechanisms for incentives? How do we, you know, if an insurance company wanted to come and cite itself and bring 600 jobs with us, is there any money going to any other aspect of economic development other than the stage program?
So, let me just pivot here for a second.
Okay.
Yes, there is, as you know, the ARPA funding, the second tranche of ARPA funding
Right.
is coming in. You participate with us.
I do.
There's $7.9 million that are earmarked for economic development out of that funding. So, yes. The reason for the specific addressing the sustainable green energy is because that is where we have movement and a lot of positive movement here in the county. So we need to be positioned now to be able to meet the needs that may be presented in that industry. We also have County IDA, we have the CRC, we have through the Advanced Albany County Alliance, we have defederalized the ALTAC fund and freed up opportunities and funding there under Kevin's leadership through the Alliance. So there are other pots in which we could use to incentivize something that's not a green energy company coming to the area.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. The Albany County Improvement Plan, you had stated that projects would be chosen by some sort of mechanism like the ARPA type board. Is that, can you elaborate on that?
Well, I think that it's something that I plan and the executive plans on working with leadership of the legislature, quite honestly. I mean, if you take the template that we established for ARPA, this is almost a supplement. You know that Treasury has very specific uses of ARPA money. We're going to go through this process, and if you're not aware, I'd ask everyone to get the word out that we just launched within the last couple of days an online survey to get interest, you know, find out what our residents want, where they want this money spent. That's a tool that we're certainly going to utilize, but we have restrictions on what we can spend it, right? So this would supplement in sorts that ARPA funding. That we receive a great idea, or the legislature, the executive brings through this process a great idea that wouldn't necessarily qualify for ARPA funding, but is beneficial and an investment in the county, which could be transformative for a community or the county as a whole. That's the design behind that $3 million.
Okay. And one last question, which is probably more of an observation than a question. I noticed in going through some of the preliminary departments with outside elected officials that they are also having recruitment problems and have vacancies. Have you shared any of your, are you looping in the other electeds for into your recruitment strategies as well?
Yeah, I I believe that that is occurring. We work hand in hand with our separately electeds to make sure that we're providing them the same resources as their executive department. So in regards to the recruitment strategies that we're proposing right now with advertising on LinkedIn and so forth and so on, yeah, we're posting those positions as well.
Can I just state right now that there'll be some things and some questions that we might have that might require, a little bit more detail, and we can actually put it in writing, so that we're satisfied.
I'm done, Madam Chairman, and thank you for your,
Mr. Mayor?
I just have one quick question. Dan, in the graduate fellowship program, do you currently have a breakdown of the $50,000, what it would be spent?
Yeah, it's, I believe it's $21 an hour, 20 hours a week for two fellows, two per year.
Per year?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Very good.
I believe those are the numbers. If they're off, I'll get you the correction, but it's my recollection.
All right. Do I have any more questions? I'm sorry, here, Mr. Graham?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Dan, good to see you again. Thanks
See you.
for coming. I noticed in the interrogatories, on item 15, which I think is a really important item, it says, please list the performance indicators and metrics used by your department and current statistics for those metrics. This is especially important for you because you're not just a department head, you're deputy county executive. Your response was the county executive office is not performance-based in the traditional sense. However, periodic reviews are undertaken for all employees to ensure performance and outcome. Why, can you explain that, first of all, why you don't feel it is traditional? I think performance-based is a traditional way of handling things. What did you mean by that?
I don't know how, the job of the executive is to oversee the departments and make sure that we're providing the best services that we possibly can. We rely heavily on our departments to run themselves and to work with us. I don't know if the executive department itself has a metric in how to judge those efficiencies or flaws. So it's a very tough question to answer, to be honest with you. The way in which it's written, it's hard for it's hard to go deep on that one. It's really dependent on consistently working with our department heads and making sure that they're having their finger on the pulse to make sure that we're getting out the best services that we possibly can and doing so as efficiently as we can. Comprehensive workforce plan, we've learned so much over the last 2 years in working as closely as we have with our departments. And I believe that from the executive's office, we're doing a pretty good job in steering that process and making sure that we're providing the resources that are necessary to each department to be able to keep their finger on the pulse and to be able to, in whatever way they do, judge successes and have a metric that is something that they're happy with and if not, improve on.
Well, in some ways, you just identified some metrics, some performance-based, because I've talked a lot about clear-based outcomes for government for the 8 years I've been here. And I noticed in a lot of these agencies, they don't have much of an answer for 15. So I think one of the biggest improvement opportunities in the county is to have a clearer idea of what the outcomes are based on performance. And you talked about performance just now. So the question is, how do you measure that? And I think that's where the snag comes, measuring it. But it can be measured. For example, you can contact the department heads at the end of the year and say, did we accomplish what we had hoped to do in terms of how we helped you? They may say yes, they may say no. They may rate you from 0 to 10. Those are metrics that matter.
Yeah.
But it also forces the workforce to focus on the things that matter the most. And that's why if you don't count it, it doesn't count.
To your point, last year.
Can I just say something?
Yep.
Okay. I think we're really getting into the weeds in some of these.
Well, I think it's,
questions.
Madam Chair, I think it's the basics.
I'm just going to say this, okay? We do have the opportunity, and we allow our legislators to provide questions through the legislative email. That when the presentation is made, and I just want to remind everyone of this, not just you, Mr. Glenn, but everyone.
Yeah.
That way, when their presentation is made, they can include any questions that you may have in their presentation. And so, I just want to make sure that everyone realizes that. And some of the questions too are going on over into management budget, which is why, you know, they will be coming up second too, after the county exec.
Madam Chair, can I just 30 seconds to respond, because you just jogged my memory. There's a lot, you know. So, yes, you're absolutely right. We addressed this last year. Hasn't gotten off to the ground yet as designed because of staffing shortages, but we went in front of the legislature last year to create a data analytics position contained within management budget to do the very thing that you're talking about, to take a deep dive into what each department is actually doing and find the metrics that we can either say are working or not. We receive a lot of pass-through money, a lot of funding for different programs. We have never, to my knowledge, been able to evaluate whether or not they're actually effective. That's why we created that position. We just filled it about a month ago. That person is not up and running yet, really, because they've been tied into the budget, to be quite honest with you. But that was the design behind the creation of that, to do the very thing that you represent, to make sure that we're evaluating each and every program within each and every department to see if we're actually meeting its intended goals.
Yeah, because you've come, and all the department heads have come before, they want more than 2%. We get that all the time, you know, I'm applying scrutiny. But you're really talking about what is the value of the employee. We should know what that is. As citizens and taxpayers, we should know what the value of, I don't mean making it public, but internally, we should know what the value, and the employee should know how they're going to be judged when it comes to compensation. There should be some metric that says, we wanted you to accomplish 1, 2, and 3, and this is how well you did with 1, 2, and 3. This is an essential budget question. It's not a strategy question, it's a budget question.
All right, so is that something that you would like to give us more information on?
We certainly could provide more information if it,
Okay, all right.
yes.
Okay, I think that- And I thank you for your question, too, Mr. Green.
Yeah.
Also want to acknowledge the attendance of our minority leader, Mr. Moriello. Are there any more questions from the committee?
I have one more if I could, ma'am, or Madam Chair.
Sure.
Okay. This enhanced pay kind of caught my eye tonight in your discussion. Are you saying if there's a department and somebody leaves and there's work that needs to be done, typically in the private companies I've been in, everybody pitches in and covers until they can get a replacement without any enhanced pay? So I want to know a little bit more about when this enhanced pay will be picked. We need to know more about that. Because it seems to me it's the role of an employee to pitch in, and everybody's role to pitch in and help fill the void.
Okay, so, all right, so this is the fourth question on that enhanced pay.
Yeah, and support one too.
Okay, and so what I would like, if you could actually provide this for everyone, okay?
Sure.
Just give us something in writing on that, and so that's not a knock against you, Mr. Grimm. I just want you to know that, but we've 4 times now on that same issue, so I think it is very important to everyone. So if you could just give us a little more detailed explanation, that would be wonderful.
We will
And know that
provide
we are
it.
supporting it too, as you just said, all right?
You don't have to listen to me anymore, I get it.
Are we clear, the rest of the committee? Thank you very much,
All right.
Mr. Lynch.
Thank you all,
Thank you.
appreciate it, and looking forward to having our rest of the departments come in front of you and present a strong budget. So thank you for your attention, appreciate it.
Good job.
Hey, Wanda, Matt Miller's here in the back. Maybe he can come in. Matt, you want to sit? You want to sit down somewhere? You want to sit somewhere? Sit? Have a sit. Sit down, it's empty. You can be Mr. Brewski if you want. All right, how do you get the keyboard to talk to the darn thing? I looked it up 4 times. It won't talk. It won't let me make notes, it won't let me, sign my name, it won't let me do anything.
I think there's a lot of limits on these things we're not aware of.
I looked it up, it said to go to the settings and set the keyboard, so I did, and it makes me shut it off. I'm afraid to shut it off.
We're gonna move now forward with this, and we have, We're gonna now move to management and budget, and our commissioner is Mr. David Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and members of the legislature as a whole, as well as other departments that are here. Similar to how the deputy handled it, if I could jump into the presentation that I mailed over to Eric today. I know last year was a little easier with sharing the screen on Zoom, but kind of similar to that, we'll kind of run through this slide deck, and that will answer a good number of your questions, hopefully, and we can get out of here a little earlier. So we start off here with the revenue review. This is a year over year from 2016 to 2023. These are big picture, 30,000 foot kind of numbers. So for 2023's proposed budget, we're looking at $652 million total revenue, combined with the levy of $99,752,250 for a total of $752.2 million. As the deputy said, the levy of $99,752,250 remains unchanged from 2022. Increase in revenues is approximately $34.75 million globally across the entire budget. The second slide gives year-over-year comparisons and percentage growth of a lot of those
Dave, I could,
numbers.
Madam Chair, where is he? Because I have his memo, but I don't have what he's talking about.
My apologies, I received the email transmission late, Dave, so I didn't get a chance to distribute it.
It's not in Granicus?
It's not. It's an electronic format. I will forward the transmission to you all. I just literally didn't have an opportunity
So we'll stop looking.
present it, but Dave, continue, please.
All right, I would hold it up, but the numbers are kind of small, and you can see it from there. All right, so as I said, second slide kind of gets into percentage year-over-year changes. Third, this is everyone's favorite tax cap calculation. Ms. Chantal showed prior, and I did last year with all of you. At the end of the day, though, it's a long convoluted calculation that we perform, so you guys don't have to, thanks to the state. The following page actually gets into the year-over-year numbers of that. This chart is also in the budget book. I do have to apologize, there was one error in the budget book on the tax-based growth factor, which is a number set by the state. Thankfully, that number had absolutely no issue with our calculation this year because we did not increase our tax levy, so we had nowhere to go even close to the cap. But I apologize for that. That will be corrected via memo in the adopted budget. That brings us to slide 5. So this is the levy to tax cap calculation. When the deputy was talking before about our equalized value per $1,000 of assessed value, this is how we get to there. So this year, we have a levy of $99,752,000, as we stated. A taxable equalized value for property in the county of $31,512,911,001. That's how we back into the $3.17. Don't want to get into the nuance of all of it because different municipalities apportion their tax bills out differently. Some do the same rate across residential and commercial. You know, it's up to them how they want to apply pilots, things along those lines. We literally hand them a bill based on the ratio of assessed value. Say apportion this however you want. They send out their tax bills with our levy on it as well. So let's see, kind of a high point to throw in there. There's a field on here that says the difference between the tax cap and the 2023 budget levy, which is approximately $4.6 million that we could have gone up this year with previous year carryover as well as the growth factors allowed by the state. That will be our carryover amount for next year. So if times are rough next year and there is a need to raise taxes, we can go incrementally above the 2% because we will have that carryover amount built in as how the state wrote the laws. So let's see, we're going to do simply the tax levy divided out among the equalized value. Slide 6 brings you into sales tax. This slide is also in the budget book. This is just a slightly more updated version. Based on the timing of the charter, when we have to release the budget, we do not have final numbers for the third quarter. The state takes a couple weeks after the quarter ends to mail us our true-ups, or to wire us our true-ups. There's a lot of confusion that goes into this quarterly because everybody tries to come up with a forecast. How's my quarter doing? Where am I a month in, 6 weeks in? The problem is the state sends those wires out on a weekly basis based on historical allocation among the entire state. So the last two payments of the quarter every year, or of each quarter, are the true up to get you to your exact, what did your county, how much is apportioned to your county exactly. There was actually guidance from the state comptroller's office a few weeks ago telling everybody, hey, the last 2 weeks might not be as good as you guys are expecting. Be very, very, very conservative in your budgeting. So I do have to say, third quarter came in at $87.7 million. That is the highest third quarter we have ever had. Now, historically, second quarter to third quarter is always either flat or it increases from the second to third quarter. This year, we have a trend of $6 million down between the second quarter and third quarter. So yes, we're at historical highs, but it is coming down. That the recession everybody says we are going into is being realized as we speak. These numbers are great, and we had some great receipts that brought us out of the shutdown and kind of revitalized our coffers and everything. So I kind of missed my notes here. I'm just going off memory. So it's a $5.6 million decrease. It's the greatest drop in quarter over quarter that we've had, other than when the economy was shut down due to COVID. Current budget for sales tax in 2022 is $302 million. We started at $295. We did an amendment mid-year to increase that. This budget proposes an increase to $326 million for 2023. While this is higher than the budget for 2022, the 2023 budget is actually lower than what we'll end up at 2022 based on forecasts for our fourth quarter. Kind of what I was getting into with you guys about the drop that we're experiencing right now. And while these, temporary surpluses was nice, it helped us deal with a lot of the inflationary pressures we're now under. The reason for a lot of that increase in sales tax is because everything costs more at the register now. We all dealt with it with gas prices. We deal with it, you do a home improvement project. Kids back to school clothes were 20% more this year. The economy, economists are forecasting between 8 and 10% inflation year over year. And that's a lot of it there. As part of that, though, this budget proposes the utilization of $8.5 million undesignated fund balance to partially pay for some of those one-time costs. These are the things that the Deputy County Executive was talking about before. The investments into our future here, the $4 million proposed funding for the Sustainable Technology and Green Energy Act to be a climate-smart investment to build upon the successes already seen helping green tech companies grow here. Provides us with the long-term benefit of both the increase to our tax base in the future, as well as many good-paying jobs for our citizens. $3.8 million is budgeted to pay off the remaining previously amortized retirement contributions from 2014 to 2016. While paying this off in one lump sum, as the deputy had said earlier, we save ourselves from having to make additional payments in the next 3 years, saves us from the additional interest that would have been charged on that money while the comptroller held on to it, or held on to the debt, and also frees up cash flow between $1 million and $1.5 million for the next 3 years. All right, and then another topic of discussion we've already gotten into is the $3 million budgeted for the Albany County Improvement Initiative. Kind of the way I wanted to describe that is improvement by definition represents change. The objective of the Improvement Initiative is to fund projects and programs that will have transformative impacts on the communities within Albany County, all of the communities. And as the deputy said, it'll be a collective decision process on how that will be awarded out. Kind of the way it was originally anticipated was, as he said, similar to the ARPA Executive Committee. We have legislative, both majority and minority input. The county executive's office would have input. The comptroller is in on board then. Kind of gives a nice feel for all of our constituents. That said, even with this utilization of fund balance, the undesignated fund balance will continue to grow and be higher next year than it is this year. That balance, combined with our conservative approach to sales tax forecasting, will provide us a safety net to weather any issues we may encounter if the economic downturn is greater than expected. Next couple slides continue into sales tax growth. You probably recognize that slide from the book. Again, it just finalizes out the third quarter numbers, as well as the year-over-year comparison growth that we show in the book. Finalizes out third quarter numbers for a little better picture of everything. All right, that brings us to slide number 9. This is simply a breakdown of revenues across the various funds, the A fund, the CS, CD, the D fund. For those of you that aren't well versed in it, like the D fund is Department of Public Works, the G fund is the sewer district, the NH fund is Shaker Place, the V fund is debt service. Simply accounting things to kind of show you guys year-over-year trends so you can see how things are moving. Let's see, and then, yes, that's slide 9, and then 10 takes the same amounts and shows the year-over-year comparisons as total changes. That brings us into slide 11, which is the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement. This amount in 2022 actual received was $4,649,179. Let's see, the amount's up over a little bit over the past few years, kind of countering the overall downward trend over the past 2 decades. But as you can see from the chart, since 2000, we've only had 2 years that came in greater than $5 million and 3 that came in from below $4 million. So it's a fairly stable revenue year over year. The final slide is on our investment income. These are the investments that we make with our passive cash balances. Due to rising interest rates, as well as a lot of work from the comptroller's office and management and budget, 2022 looks to be the highest rate or highest year for investment income in recent history. We're projecting somewhere between 2.75 million, maybe a little more than that. Just prior to the pandemic, we had like a 2.4 something million dollar year, and that was the highest since I've been with Albany County in the last decade. So let's see, yeah, due to multiple factors, including improved cash flows, increased rates in the market, but more importantly, the comptroller's office, Comptroller Rizzo and her staff have made an effort here to allow us to invest in other funds that the previous comptroller never allowed us to access. He wouldn't allow us to take our bonded proceeds and invest that where you can invest that. You just have to watch out for arbitrage and make sure that you don't make more off the investment than the underlying interest. By opening up that's a big portion of why both this year was a higher number than would have been previously expected, and then going forward, why the county should just be more fiscally savvy and get the highest rate of return that we can on these things. So I need to thank her and her office for that. They've done some great cash flow items for us and everything. A couple other items I'd like to touch on outside of these categories. Some of these were also touched on by the deputy. I think that's because some of them I knew you guys were going to have questions on. So the first one would be the accrued liability. We originally put the accrued liability line into the 2022 budget via a resolution. I believe it was $100,000 this year as a test, and then $250,000 next year to kind of continue the experiment going forward. Just to say, we've currently tapping that for one employee's accrued or liability there to free up a line. As we said when we had first put the resolution through, though, this is not for rank and file ordinary staff where you have 12 people doing the same job function. This is for kind of a division head, a manager, a department head, a deputy, someone, as the deputy said, that needs to be replaced instantaneously. We have a maximum of 13 weeks carryover on this, that we can't sit for 3 months and not have some of these jobs filled. So that was kind of the logic behind that. Another category you may have noticed is the enhanced pay lines. We don't need to go into that too much, I don't think. It sounds like we're gonna have some questions via email there. Just wanted you to know, though, that some of those that were put into the budget, like the Department of Health one, is additional Article 6 funding. There's some other ones that are grant funded. That is different from the large one that we put into management and budget that the deputy was describing. The reason for stuff like this is, as the deputy kept talking, this budget gives us additional flexibility with our workforce. If there's something we've learned over the past couple of years, we need that workforce. Just for the different evolving challenges that we encounter while providing the necessary services to our community, we need to still get the services out there. People need them. They don't care if we're running a 10% vacancy in a certain job title at DSS. The work needs to get done. And this kind of provides opportunities to continue getting that work done in trying times. Let's see, another one that you guys are probably going to ask about, healthcare for both active employees as well as retiree healthcare. You'll see increases in these categories countywide. This has to do with the initial benefits authorized in last year's budget for the employees, as well as increased costs of providing these services across the board. Additionally, we're starting to see increases in retiree coverage due to lowering of the years of service necessary for retirees to receive the benefit, both opening up a larger pool of recipients, as well as putting them on this coverage for a longer period of time. The forecasts for these numbers are based on actual usage combined with discussions from our outside benefits consultant, utilizing their anticipated growth rates year over year. So that's kind of where we came up with those numbers. And I kind of threw a lot at you, but I can see some people are already getting a little itchy, so if you have questions.
All right, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
presentation. I'll start with Mr. Peter, and then if anyone else has any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. And mine is sort of a brief, I know we talked about sales tax revenue, sort of instead of increasing, going to, what, down 6%? Is that right?
It was down $5.6 million from the second quarter to the third quarter.
Okay. What does that represent if we're comparing third quarter to third quarter previously, right? Because if you, to your point, if we're at a high, I understand that eventually we have to come to a low, but is that low lower than previous third quarters to make up for it? Or is it very simple that we're returning to a normalized third quarter based on inflationary fears?
We're getting back to where it was pre-pandemic. It's
Okay.
gonna be, a year or two slide to get to that point, but yes, it's not, we're not setting new, record lows or anything like that. We're still at a high point, it's coming down.
Okay, and are we seeing anything else dropping off a cliff, or is it more that we're seeing just the general return to normalcy? Like, do we think Q4 coming up is gonna see more of the same, or do we think that's gonna start balancing back out between Q3 and Q4, what we've previously seen last year?
If I could answer that, I'd be the head economist at a global bank.
See, I thought we always get the best and the brightest here in Albany County, so we're gonna try.
As you guys are well aware, I tend to be fairly fiscally conservative in these estimates. You have to be. Your sales tax is the biggest number that we determine right off the bat. If you overshoot that estimate,
Yep.
you're in a world of trouble. And I believe the county executive has told me stories about when it happened when he was in the legislature and there was issues then. That is kind of how he's guided me to put these forecasts together. That said, if you look at several of the other municipalities in the county, we're actually pretty close in lockstep with each other. It's kind of surprising how close some of those numbers went.
And just to follow up on that quickly, with one quick follow-up if I could, Madam Chair. With that, so sales tax estimated for next year, how different do we think inflation versus, like, expenses from inflation versus sales tax is going to relate? Do we think we're in line, or do we really think inflation can sort of scare any gains we had away?
It's a good question. I think we can cover everything, but I don't think there's a lot of fluff there.
Okay. And then the final follow-up is that, mortgage reporting tax, we had sort of, I think the capital region, but Albany County specifically had a great, housing market in the sense that, things went on the market, they were sold, top line prices, money was cheap. Obviously, that's slowing down. Do we think that's gonna blow a hole in your budget, or we think that's expected?
Nope. So that was forecast, I thought I heard somebody comment. There is a forecasted reduction in that, we're anticipating that. The initial home sales are not really where it's gonna drop off. There will be a drop off in that. The biggest difference, the biggest driver is your refis.
Yeah.
You were at a 3%, 3.25% refi rate a year and a half ago. You're over 7% now.
Got it.
It doesn't make economic sense to refinance half the time.
Good, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Riley.
Thank you.
Mr. Bergdorf.
Very quick question, it's sort of a follow-up on the sales tax. Are you able to break down sales tax revenue, or does the state give you statistics on what's brick and mortar and what's internet sales? Do we discern any trends that affect the county?
The state comptroller does break it down by industry. That specific breakdown gets very convoluted, because when they set up the initial categories, there is a mail order category. That will capture most online-only sales. The biggest gray area you get, though, is when you order, say you order something from Walmart, and you go pick it up at Walmart. Is that an online sale, or is that a brick and mortar sale? They ran your credit card before you picked it up.
I don't know.
The stores don't know how to report it either, so they're not all standardized how they report it.
But based on the existing trends and what we've had and what the state has reported to us, do we see a steadily increasing internet number with a corresponding decrease in?
Taking into account that is not a very good number, yes, we have seen an increase to that. But again, that's not a very good number.
Does that give us cause for concern or an element of hope?
I am more hopeful than I would have been 2 years ago when everybody was saying gloom and doom, the retail centers are gonna die. Is brick and mortar retail hurting? Yes, and it's gonna keep changing, but thankfully places like Crossgates are trying to evolve. They're bringing in other tenants that aren't just retail. They're bringing in lodging, they're bringing in entertainment venues. They're trying to keep those taxable parcels on the tax rolls as much as they can and still generate income in other ways. So again, yeah, I'm far more optimistic on that than I would have been a couple years ago in terms of the retail sector. That said, don't get me wrong, we're still on our way into a recession.
Yeah, wow.
Thank you. Again, you have questions?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. State aid is projected to be 99 million, down 3 million from last year, and then federal aid is projected to be up 20 million. And I'm wondering why is that happening, Dave? Because they're both spending money like mad.
So, to get into any specifics, I can't just,
Just generally.
rip off the top of my head. A lot of that is, a lot of our programs are driven by demand. So it's as our agencies are forecasting whether, a child, for a specific example, a developmentally disabled child, are they gonna need to go into a special school? Are they gonna need transport to a different school? Or, different things fall under different programs and who pays for them. So as those, evaluations kind of move and, back and forth, it tends to have an ebb and flow between the state and the feds.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Riley, for your presentation.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Our next presentation will be the county clerk, Mr. Hidley, and Mr. Lee. County clerk, in your budget books, I forgot to call out the pages, it's on page 200.
You look great.
It's great to be back, I can tell. There's nobody happier than me when the doctor said you can go back to work. After 7 weeks.
I have some actually. At work.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hidley. Are you ready?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and distinguished members of the legislature. Tonight I have with me Deputy County Executive, or I just promoted her, Deputy County Clerk Geraldine Gould, Executive Deputy County Clerk, and Deputy County Clerk Craig Carlson from the Hall of Records. We thank you for this opportunity. I think you'll see from the budget that we've submitted that we haven't made many changes this year. As a matter of fact, we may have reduced a couple of the line items in the budget. We've requested no increases in salaries at all. We continue, and we are continuing to work on our shared services program. This year it's with the town of Guilderland, where we'll be coming to the legislature with an RLA for $150,000 to work on that shared services program with them. We are continued as much as we can to upgrade our e-filing and e-recording systems. We continue to ask for the money to continue the availability of deeds and mortgages online, which we put in for $60,000 again this year. We didn't go up on that cost. We still continue to work, and we will apply in 2023 for another local government records management improvement fund grant, which of course we'll have to wait until February of next year before we can begin that process. But we are working with the town of Guilderland this year, and as I said to you, the RLA will be coming to the legislature very shortly to approve us to get that funding, and so we can get started on that program. I think you're going to see in both the county clerk's office and the county hall of records an excessive amount of employee vacancies, and you're going to find the same thing as the deputy county executive mentioned to you earlier. We have lost a lot of employees to state government. We have lost a lot of employees to our own county government. The vacancies, they just don't want to. They don't want to work for $27,000 a year, and of course, there's nothing we in this room can do about that because that's negotiated through the union, and we can only hope for the best when it comes for new contract negotiations. But we do have several interviews coming up shortly. The Civil Service Office has worked with us so hard to be able to try to fill these vacancies. It's caused a major shortage. We've had to change a lot of the ways we do business in the county clerk's office because of the shortage of employees. You heard earlier from even as short-handed as we are, we still get the job done with the staff that we have. And these these two people here are really the reason why, because they're the ones that are making sure that the people in the trenches are moving along and getting the jobs done, and they are. And, you know, I constantly hear them say how tired they are. Well, I understand, because we are short-staffed. And, you know, the counter and the Hall of Records both are hurting for employees. And, you know, I'm doing everything I can. I really am. We've used that online method of, we had 19, 20 applications come in for the job, and how many ended up showing up? 3 for interviews, and none of them took a job. So, I mean, we've worked with civil service in every way, shape, and form that we possibly can to get these jobs filled at the salary levels that they are, but we just have not been successful, correct, Jerry?
Correct.
And the same thing with Craig over at the Hall of Records. We still have a couple of jobs that are in that 3-year window that they left early on the incentive program, so we have to wait till after next year before we can even think about filling those. But other than that, I think you'll see that we're in pretty good shape in the county clerk's office. I think you'll see our numbers are there. We did make, what, about $600,000 in surplus last year. And because of the housing revenue, we're anticipating that it could probably be around the same amount of revenue coming out of the county clerk's office again this year. Now, as you heard earlier from Mr. Riley, the refinancing, when it was very low, we were busier than all heck. Also, with buying new homes, we were busier than all heck. That trend is now kind of subsided a tad bit, and now we're back to the level we were a couple of years ago before COVID hit. But, you know, we are still anticipating a good amount of supplemental revenue to go to the county from the county clerk's office. And we're very proud of that, and we will continue to do what it takes to make money for the county in any way, shape, or form that we can.
Thank you so much. I just want to acknowledge that we are happy to see, you know, that you had a couple of challenges,
Yeah.
but you managed to make it out, and if I can just say, God is good.
All I can tell you, Madam Chairwoman, is that the stars were aligned in the right spots for me because, you know, my doctor even said you should be dead right now. And that's a true statement coming from him. And it was a very scary 7 weeks for me, and, you know, glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you, too. I'm going to start with Mr. Peter, and then next, just let me know if there are any other questions from the members.
Matt?
Mr. Ridley, thank you for being here. You know, seconding my chair's comments that we're so happy to have you here. Excited to see you expanding the shared services to Guilderland. I know we started that project, you know, with the city of Albany, and it's been successful. So
Twice.
Twice. Yeah, it's excited to see that. Only a couple brief questions for you.
Sure.
I think your budget is pretty straightforward, so no big things there. Yeah, in sort of the A1410 line versus the A411, you basically have DGS shared services drop on the one and it increases in the other. Is that just a trade-off on how you're presenting it? I'm sorry, Mr. Riley. I think there might be an assist behind you, if that's okay.
He is going to give me an assist.
Yeah, no worries. If I just could step in for 1 second, I'm sorry. So those numbers, along with things like the fringe rates, are calculated centrally by management and budget. There were some changes to a couple of calculations this year, some accounting for different office spaces, things like that, headcounts. So you will see some swings kind of up and down.
But it's mostly an offset?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Second, if I could, Madam Chair. So with the e-filing, e-recording capabilities that you sort of discussed expanding and stuff, can you go a little bit more into that? Just sort of like, you know, how is that upgrading going? Are there challenges to that? What are we sort of seeing for 2023 on that?
We recently made e-filing mandated in Albany County. So aside from a small amount of cases, everyone now has to file electronically. So the fees are all still collected, nothing changes as far as revenue goes. It's just a smoother process and less traffic in the door because they're doing it all electronically now. The e-recording, due to COVID, that picked up immensely. That's triple what it used to be, to the point, as you know, Bruce was saying, with the rates were so low that everybody was refinancing. We had 300 closings in the queue on any given day. I mean, it's really picking up, and all the state revenue and the taxes and recording fees are coming from that. So we're able to, again, process it differently because we don't have to have the customer standing in the office anymore.
Great, that's it for me, Madam Chair.
All right, do I have any of, Mr. Tackett?
I just want to clarify, you said that some of these positions that are very low, like even, look, one of them looks like it's under $15 an hour, which I believe was our bare lowest that we were going to go. Is out of your control because they're union negotiated contract?
That's correct,
Okay,
unfortunately,
great.
out of
Thank
my
you.
hands.
All right. Mr. Ethier?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you think the biggest problem is the low wages and the hiring?
There's no doubt about that's what it is. I mean, we've had employees come to work for us for a year, and you know, that 1 year, we're training that employee to learn the whole process of what the county clerk's office is all about. And the next thing we know, the state is gobbling them up for positions that are of much higher pay. We can't,
$10,000 more
yeah, we
than what
can't,
we're
we're not
paying.
competitive in
Yeah,
that
we're
way.
on
You know, paying an employee 27.5 or 27.7, anything like that, it's impossible to keep an employee. And to your statement, you're right, $15 an hour is about what it boils down to.
I think it's 29.3, if, $15 an hour, and this, there's a couple under 29,
Right.
Yeah.
The training grounds are still hard.
Okay. Ms. Plotsky?
I think just one more point that Craig just made, and I think you should hear it, is that really, in the Hall of Records, we are the training grounds for the state records management program. I mean, they just gobble us up like this.
I've lost 4 archivists in the last 2 years, and each leads the hall of records within the county, starting out with $10,000 more. We just can't compete, so I get good training. I train them and they leave. So we're doing something right that they're moving on. They get the groundwork, but they move on.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
I just thought it should be heard.
Ms. Plotsky, did I miss you?
Peter asked it, Mr. Peter asked it, so
Sorry.
I'm doing it.
Are there any other questions for
Yeah.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the best part of the presentation tonight is that you're well enough to give it, Bruce.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure everybody feels that way. I do want to ask you about the item 15 question. And the question is, you said the question is not applicable to the clerk's office or Hall of Records. That's the performance and metrics. How do you rate your employees in terms of performance?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't believe there's a way to rate an employee that is hired through the union and is union, is under the union negotiation processes. A rating process is really for someone that has the ability to move up in rank and file by making more money. I don't have that ability in the county clerk's office, or the Hall of Records.
Well, you must be able to evaluate your employees. I mean, that's essential. And, especially the clerk's office, you're dealing with the public all the time.
Correct.
And there should be a lot of feedback from the public on how well you're doing.
And there is, believe me, there is. And you know what? Thank the good Lord, the majority of the feedback that we get is positive feedback. There's very, very little negative feedback that we get. The employees handle the public very well, even under stressful situations. And if they don't, we'll call them in the office and we'll talk to them and give them a little pep talk and say, you've got to remember you're dealing with the public here.
Yeah, but that's a performance metric. Some employees are better than others.
Correct.
And I think that's important to know, given how important customer service is to the clerk. So I think every department, and this question is coming for every department should have some way of measuring what the value is of their employees.
So noted.
And
I don't have that right now.
No,
to be honest
I'm
with you.
just saying it to everybody. I'm not picking you out, Bruce. I'm just saying this is something that we need to improve.
Okay, so we're gonna move forward.
Thank you.
From that, thank you. All right. And also, I just want to acknowledge that the chairman of the Legislative Act Caucus, Mr. Clayton, thank you. And we're happy that you're here tonight. We know you've had some challenges too.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry I was late, but I had another meeting going on down the hall.
Oh, so you were in the building?
Yeah, I'm right down the hall.
I thought I saw him before.
All right, so are there any other questions for Mr. Hinton? From our county clerk?
Well, I'd like to thank the committee for having us tonight, and if you do have any questions, please do not be afraid to email me and get back to you with an answer as quickly as I can.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
So I'm going
Oh, yeah.
attorneys.
Well, yeah, no.
We're gonna move on now, and we're going to have the coroners.
Situation
Mr. Kavanaugh?
Who's up?
Corners.
You don't, thank you, Lauren. I'm good, buddy.
Skip the video.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
representing the coroner's office, probably for my last budget meeting.
Let's hope for you.
Oh, yeah. Anybody has any questions? I mean, not much has really changed.
Before you begin, I just want everybody, I want to acknowledge this. You can find this presentation in the corresponding pages for the corners at 197. 197 and 198 in the budget book. Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. Go ahead.
Everything's, not much of a change from previous year. Our office is busy. We have one vacancy, which is the part-time clerk position. We've been unable to fill. What happens there is the office is ran by a full-time secretary, part-time clerk. When the secretary's off, we usually forward the coroner's office phone number to whatever coroner's on duty to answer any questions somebody might have, but we've been unable to fill that position also. It's like $15 an hour.
All right.
Autopsies, same, a busy year for the overdoses, up to date, I just checked earlier in the week, probably between 75 and 80 throughout the county that we've had this year.
All right, thank you. I'd like to ask you a question.
Sure.
Could you give us an update regarding mortuary services in Albany County? We currently have a contract line for $430,000 in the budget. Are there any long-term plans about how to best manage and address the ongoing costs?
For the hospital? Is that, I'm not hearing you too well, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the hospital?
Yes.
Yeah.
I tell you, I always had a plan, there should be 3-4 counties come together, do a centralized facility, maybe Schenectady, Albany, Rensselaer, Saratoga County. Get a building and have one facility, all these counties go in on it. And believe it or not, you know, something, it probably could be a moneymaker down the road. And it would also save, everybody's using Ellis right now, but Ellis facility is nothing like Albany Med's facility, constantly at capacity. A lot of cases, people are in the morgue a month, 2 months. We have somebody out there, been there since July. So what they had to do was get a trailer, a refrigerated unit for all these cases that are not picked up or gonna go through social service for burial. Like I said, their facility's nothing like Albany Med. But it's working for the time being. But like I said, that was always like my idea.
Picks them up.
Some of other counties in the state did this regional facility, and it seems to be working great. It'd be perfect for 3 or 4 counties to go in on. Albany County does the volume of cases, probably over 300 cases a year, compared to like somebody like Rensselaer County, maybe 125. Saratoga's less, but it'd be perfect to have a facility right here in Albany County.
Ms. Plosky, did you have a question?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify, do you mean the laboratory fees and services line for $430,000?
Yes.
Okay. And medical services / therapy
That's
is 220, that's separate.
That's the
That's the-
pathologist, that's
the-
separate.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Kavanaugh?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a dead body there since July?
July.
Nobody claims this?
One claim, well, there's a family, it wasn't my case, so I can't comment too much about it, but there's a family, you know, they're gonna take care of it, they're not gonna take care of it. Nobody's got any money. That's all, you know, when I first started being coroner, there was none of this. But now, I think we have like 8 cases out there. The gentleman that was struck by a motor vehicle on Northern Boulevard 3 weeks ago was my case. He was homeless, no next to kin, he's still there. So, turned over to social services, funeral home, gonna do an application, but they're not gonna pick up that body until they know it's gonna get approved to get picked up. They wanna get paid.
So you have to get approval from the government.
Right.
To handle. Can't you cremate that, or is that against the rules?
You know, that's
Cremate a body?
against the law unless you have authorization from the family member. Otherwise, they gotta be buried.
What if there's no family member around?
They do it down in New York City. They do in the city, but for some reason up here, no. They have to be buried.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ray, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I do. I just have a quick
Go
one.
ahead, go
Sure,
ahead,
go ahead.
Roberto.
How long is our agreement with Ellis Hospital? I believe we're in a 3-year contract.
Okay, and are we in the first year, second year, third year?
I think we're in the second year right
Second
now.
year, okay.
Yes. We're in
So
the
it's
second
not
year.
we don't have a short-term crisis on our hands.
No, but you know, I'm gonna tell you something, down the road, there's gonna be a problem. You know, Albany Med, they're like just out of the business. They don't- I'm surprised, but they're out of the business. And the ones they do, their price is double what we're paying out at Ellis.
Remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, so they gave us a 30-day notice, which was terrible. You know, the majority of the cases come from Albany County.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Ms. Potsy.
Thank you. Just a quick question. How did the overdose deaths compare to prior years? This is the 2022 chart.
We're right on track for like last year and the year before. Probably gonna be around 100.
Okay.
So we're about 76 right now, when I checked earlier in the week. You know, something, I was in the city of Albany 2 weeks ago, and I was on 1, and cop said, don't go anywhere, we got another one for you. On the other side of the city, it's all over. We had 2 in Ravine over the weekend, it's terrible. And it's hitting all families. You know, it's very, very sad. It's bad enough for the deceased, but what it does to the families, it's terrible. No end in sight for that right now.
We have a question.
Yeah, I think I missed something. Did you say Albany Med is no longer providing those services, or
They are, but you're gonna pay double than what we're paying out there.
in their regional trauma center? So we're still seeing
We
people
get
from
all
other
them
counties come
cases.
into Albany County, and we're not being reimbursed from those
No
other counties still,
Right.
too.
No,
Right.
no.
Do we
Would be
find-
nice, because, you know, what happens, somebody dies for trauma in the emergency room tonight at Albany Med, we have to pay to have them transported to Ellis in the morning, and then autopsy and
Right, okay.
their facility, so.
Lynn, did I see your hand?
No, Ray and I had the same question.
Okay.
Going on in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Am I missing anybody? I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. All right, I want to thank you for your presentation. And, you know, I just want to acknowledge too, this is our first time back in, you know, all together like this. And so, it's been a long haul here since 2019, you know, finally back in. And so, I just want everyone to know that I appreciate your patience and understanding too. And I have to say that our numbers are still up as far as members are concerned in their attendance. And so I'm very proud of everyone that has come out as far as our members are concerned, because the numbers are still up. Thank you so much.
You know, all through the COVID, don't forget, you had 4 corners, not knowing what to expect, but going into houses, you know, with families. We were all dressed up in the white gowns and the booties and the masks. You know, people still died all through that COVID. We were out there, we had a job to do. And all 4 of us
did our jobs, so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Okay.
Capra.
Thank you. Take care.
So now we're gonna move on,
Gotta be a certain personality, but.
and we're going to move on to the comptroller's office, and Ms. Rizzo will begin our presentation. Good evening, how are you tonight?
How are you?
Good
Madam Chair, honorable members of the Audit and Finance Committee, the Chair of the Ledge, and all the legislators, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the 2023 proposed budget for the Department of Audit and Control. I'll try to keep this brief. I know that you've been here for several presentations tonight. I'm sure many of you are looking forward to get home for the Yankee game. Joining me tonight are two of my deputies, Chip Dott and Mike Wheeler. I'm requesting approval of the 2023 budget for the Department of Audit and Control. The budget has a very slight overall percentage increase, which is less than the overall county increase. It does include some organizational changes that align with our workforce development plan and put the office in a better position looking forward. Like every county department, we must be prepared to respond to national workforce challenges such as staffing shortages due to retirements and resignations. Two fundamental elements of the preparation include succession planning and cross-training to create a strong, flexible, and resilient workforce. Another fundamental element is recognizing and rewarding talent and hard work. I'm very proud of the team that I built and the work that has been done, and I look forward to the road ahead as we continuously seek to improve the financial health and operational efficiencies of Albany County. We responded to all committee questions ahead of time. If you have any questions this time, we would be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I could?
Yes, Mr. Peters.
Thank you, Comptroller, and thank you for your presentation. A couple questions, if I could. I think the first one is, can you discuss sort of the use of the $10.2 million in debt reserve funding? I know it's in the financial plan, and why that's structured as it is, and the use.
Yes. When funds are borrowed and a capital plan is complete, those remaining funds are used to pay principal and interest towards debt service. When I started in 2020, I worked with my team to reconcile all unspent capital dollars for projects that were complete and needed to be closed. Several capital projects were closed out, and that money was applied to the debt reserve. We set up a schedule to apply these funds over time. So we have a schedule to 2030, and we identify how much principal and interest we can use every year for the projects that have closed. We can't use more than what we pay out in principal and interest for those bonds.
Got it. May I, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Perfect. Thought I thought it was, so that's great. Can you discuss the implementation on where we sort of are with Munis and the revenue tracking across county departments and how you see that happening in 2023 or when we should see the impact of that, and how we're being presented things?
Just to give you some background, when I was elected, I began to work on ensuring there was a smooth transition. Part of that work involved me requesting accounts receivable aging report. I found out there wasn't one. It was also clear that Albany County was not utilizing the accounts receivable module in the Munis accounting system. Receivables were being tracked by departments in a variety of ways. In some cases, they were not being tracked at all. The implementation of the accounts receivable module began in '21 with pilot departments. A major delay occurred when the Children, Youth, and Family Services unfortunately lost a key employee that was integral to the process of billing. Audit Control had to step in to spend significant time and resources obtaining a clear and understanding the billing procedures and translating that to the accounts receivable module for CYF for this project is still ongoing. Other departments have been set up and are utilizing the AR module, like sewer and the Department of Works. And we are working with several other departments to begin accounts receivable tracking as well. The major impact of a functional AR model will be having greater insight into billing and outstanding revenue, and this would also give us the ability to have more accurate cash flow projections, allowing for more accurate and efficient financial processes, which also helps us increase our interest income.
Yes.
I have a couple of other brief ones, a couple from some members who had asked me to ask a couple questions. One is, as your role as public administrator, and that's part of a larger question, specifically, I don't think we want an answer now. It's complex, it's long, but what was requested is, can we get a written sort of statement of how the process goes in your office, when it happens, how you dispose of the properties and things of that nature. And then a following is, would you be willing to, on an annual basis, let us know the proceeds of those sales and where those proceeds went?
I was trying to catch the first part of the question, but I think as the public administrator,
Yes.
and I will say when I started, hello, what a job.
Yep.
It's got to occupy 40% of my time. I can't believe it. It is true, I take on an active role of public administrator as I sell the properties. People that pass away, sometimes we could leave those houses in for foreclosure and wait this number of years, and then we have blight and houses are getting torn down. I have a huge real estate background. I took it upon myself to work on selling these properties, cleaning them out, hiring a broker, things of that nature. I have brought over $200,000 in taxes that have been paid, that were back taxes. I have increased the assessments substantially. I am putting together a narrative. It's difficult because it's also very emotional and it's very time consuming. I don't think people realize the magnitude of this part of my job. But what I'm going to do is when I do my State of the Fisc, I will have a summary of public administration to let everybody know, what we are actually doing. I mean, I take over probably a property a month, and it's increasing. I'll take 6. I have 6 right now. It's a very difficult part of my job, but I will give a summary at my State of the Fisc.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We've finished. One more.
Wait a minute. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question, Madam Chair. Item 15, my item 15 question, Sue. Performance indicators and metrics, your response was not applicable?
Yeah, I see. I realize that now because I just saw that page was missing. So I will say that we have performance evaluations, and so we do meet with each one of our employees every year. We rank them. We also...
Let me see, you rank them, like 1 to 5 on
1 to 5.
different characteristics?
1 to 5, basically, and ask them to rank themselves.
Okay.
To say, how do you think you're doing? And it's interesting to see how some people think are exceptional, and they're very humble, and they don't rank themselves the 5, which I would rank them a 5. And they might give themselves a 3 or a 4, which that's why, in my previous job, that's how we did reviews. So we use a format that we actually developed, and trying to also see, because it's important to me, about a succession plan. When I started, it was difficult because my most key position, the chief accountant, left. And there should have been a succession. I now have a succession plan, and I have everybody cross-trained also to make sure that we're covered, because we can't leave Albany County without being able to account for our books and records. We also have to make sure we process all our payables. So when you talk about ranking people, we do know our, especially in accounts payable, how much work people actually produce. We have to produce every day. People, we have to get we got to get paperwork processed. But we do have these evaluations every year.
The evaluations themselves spark really good communication.
Absolutely, and also see what people
So there's
want
100
to do.
reasons to do this. That's why I'm such a bug on this.
That's right.
It really matters.
Yes, and I mean, HR does have some good key points about, we created our own, because like, you have past history, I do too, to try to make sure we get feedback from the employees. But so we put NA, I guess I wasn't, I think I put NA last year, so I should have elaborated that we've been doing performance evaluations.
I think you gave an excellent explanation, on how you evaluate your employees. That's one of the best we heard tonight.
It's the only one, but thank you.
Just one more. So the fund balance policy that the legislature approved, I believe it was last year, probably 21, where it was that anything in excess of the 12.5% in the fund balance at the close of the year would then come back to the legislature for discussion on how to expend that excess revenue above, the reserve. So I understand that you won't have full results for this year until probably March of 2023, at the end of the first quarter to, actually see what's happening. But based on the projections in this budget, where do we think the fund balance would be? And I understand that's a question that has to be amended based on where we end up this year. But based on what we're seeing now in this budget, 12.5 was the goal. where are we going to be about that?
So we have talked about that internally, and we talked about it with management and budget. And Mike Wheeler has a very good budget background. So we're going to work together collaboratively to try to see where our fund balance, not only for this year, but I like, future year projections.
Sure.
Because the fund balance is getting pretty hefty.
Right.
But I'm very conservative, and I'm very worried about a recession.
Understood.
And I'm very worried that we borrowed $40 million when COVID hit, that we literally ran out of cash.
Yep.
So I understand the percentages and the allocations. We are starting to look at that. It is true, it's a difficult task. I don't know, Mike, if you want to elaborate more on what you're preparing?
What I'm doing is similar to what I had done with my time at the city, is I'm doing a 5-year comparison of, where we were to where we are to where we're projecting. I'm doing it line by line throughout every budget line. It is time consuming because much of it, like salaries, you can actually just apply a formula to, which will, where are we at this point, where we're going to be. But when you start getting into some of the expenses and then some of the revenues, you really have to understand timing, understand when the money comes in, how it comes in. So that does take some time.
Sure.
And we are just in the beginning of the third quarter. So really, the closer we get to towards the end of the year, the more clear that number will become. But it is a time-consuming process.
Okay.
And as Mike mentioned, the third quarter, he's totally right, but you have to understand, we take money in from the fourth quarter through March of the next year.
Yep.
So we're 5-6 months out right now.
Yep.
I'm trying to figure out a number.
What I think we'd appreciate is if at the end of the year, maybe given a preliminary estimate to Eric to share with the Finance Committee, and then obviously we know a final number may not come until the end of the first quarter of 2023, which is understood, when we would then see it, just so we generally understand where we are, that would be appreciated.
Right, because we're also looking at encumbrances and things, because a lot
Right.
happens in January, February, March.
Understood.
So, but we will do the best we can to try to analyze the data that we have.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to get Ms. Fox.
Just a couple of quick questions. For the chief auditor position, the salary shows a significant increase. Could you address that briefly, please?
Sure. The chief auditor has spearheaded and concluded several financial and operational audits since joining the department, raising the level of professionalism and the quality of the department's audits, and they do an excellent job with post-audit follow-up, ensuring that findings are being corrected and that recommendations are being implemented. Our current chief auditor is highly credentialed. She's both a CIA certified internal auditor and a CFE, a chief fraud examiner. This is also a management position that supervises and cross-trains our audit staff, further developing our workforce and enabling us to take on more financial and operational audits. We are lucky to have such a highly skilled person in the role currently. The chief auditor is also the backup for the associate operations supervisor, whose primary role is to maintain and support Munis, our accounting system. The requested salary is in line with the salary for equivalent positions in both the public and private sector.
Was this person hired at the 81,600 rate? Was she already in that position in 20?
She was hired at a lesser amount than that.
Yeah, okay.
And we elevated her, and then when I started, we got hit with the time and attendance audit. That was never completed. It was unbelievable that we completed that audit and verified all the findings, and she was critical in that. We've also done the seizure audits for the sheriff and the DA, and the follow-up from those audits that we are now taking over. The DA and the sheriff have agreed for us to, take over the seizure funds, which follow-up in the past has never been done. My auditor is the best I've ever seen. She's actually a good writer. She works with all the departments, and she works with them. She's not adversarial, and that's why I feel strongly about elevating her salary, and also she's the backup for another critical position, supporting Munis, our accounting system.
One other quick question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
For training, conference training and tuition, 2022 was requested $25,000, and again for 2023, are you on target to expend about 25,000 in 2022? Like, that sounds a little high, looking at the prior year's expenditures, but then COVID plays a role for
And a
trainings
lot of
and
it does have to
things,
do, we're
so-
encouraging, like I said, she's the CIA and chief fraud examiner, so she has continuing education. I'm getting out there more and going to conferences to meet with other controllers and other treasurers, and as well as NISAC and that. I don't know, Chip, if you know, I don't know off the top of my head if that.
Well, I mean, some of this training is about munis as well.
Oh, right.
So we've had munis training, and we have more munis training that's been updated twice this year. Munis has been updated, hoping there's not a third, but to be honest with you, every time munis changes, it costs us money. And the updates are not just for our office. I mean, we have to go out and train every department how to handle it. All the changes, I mean, they're needed, they make it better each time. I'm not saying they don't. It's sort of like if you remember the dial phone, and now you have a push button phone, and now you have a cell phone. It's the way progress works. But there's a lot of training that goes from munis for this too. And I will say, COVID has slowed us down on some of this stuff. We're coming back to it now. More people are having outside training where you can go to these things. There was some before online, and some of the online ones we wouldn't really care that much for. A lot of times you need more hands-on.
Ms. Bosky,
Thank you.
are you okay?
Yep.
Okay. Ms. Virgo?
Actually, it's kind of an interesting follow-up to Vicky's question. I was going to commend you on the routine increase in audits from your office. And you say 4 to 7 will be completed by the end of this year. You have an audit plan that goes into 2023, and I'm not going to ask you who they are or what they are, but how robust is it? Is it going to be an upturn?
So we do, well, I wouldn't say it's an upturn because of time constraints. Audits are very, some are simpler than others. So we're on target as far as the number of audits that we will have completed. We do post our audits. We do have a plan for future audits. We had goals for this year. We have goals for next year. The accounts receivable audit's taking a little more time because especially with CYF that we had to help them out so much. But we do plan on auditing and continuing audits that I think a lot of them are process audits as well. We're helping Albany County with the departments to try to create processes to be more efficient, not just, there's several different cash audits and things of that sort, and routine audits. But yes, I'd say we have a plan, and we're on target with our plan that we had for last year.
Good, thank you.
There's also usually around 40 routine audits every year. Departmental and hotels.
No,
Not just 7 that are more outside to
Ad
our
hoc,
game plan.
yeah.
Thank you so much. I just want to say we look forward to your report on your first presentation as public administrator.
It'll be exciting.
I find that that's probably going to be very interesting.
After I write the book about all the stories, only kidding.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
for coming in tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
7th inning stretch. Some jumping jacks.
So the district attorney's office and
We'll be plastic chairs, don't you?
So it's not we begin the presentation and
somebody doesn't.
everybody wants to stand up for a minute, shake it off.
Take it off, do a couple jumping jacks.
Family. And it'd be
Bill says, I want a steak. Give me some M&Ms.
essentially the state representative that's
I had a cup of soup
empowered
before I
to sell a house or handle a bank account or something like that.
I'd be interested
You're losing money. Well, I know.
207, Mickey.
Does it.
I start strong with my little tab.
The big ones, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I know. That's an offline question.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Email that.
Yeah. Yeah. You could open a can of worms with that one. But, you know, I mean, you try to, I know, but you.
Is there a baseball game on tonight?
Yankees. Houston Astros, game one.
Game one, huh?
So.
American League Championship.
It is?
Guess I should care about that.
7:37 they started.
Hasn't started yet.
Is that it right now?
The Yankees, you guys gotta make this one.
Yeah, the Padres are beating them
I know, and they left you last, though.
bottom of the seat.
No, well, no, maybe they'll slow on purpose.
You like that?
Yeah, I do.
These are your favorites.
This is a fortune. It's 1.1 million.
It's a lot.
Personnel.
You know how we're always interested in personnel. Come on, I can't be doing this 2 and 3 times.
What happens? You can't get put on your I don't even know. Good.
No?
Oh, wait a minute, yeah.
You have to. You must. I just can't do it on this, I usually do it here. I don't understand why I can't make it work this day.
I know,
I was working this afternoon,
yeah,
I was
something-
at home writing notes on it. I don't know
I
if I
can't
banged
get
on the
into,
way down here.
I can't get into my email, that's terrible. So I had stuff, emails I wanted to see.
Next time. Empanada llama. That's what I'm thinking.
They wouldn't let me sign on my Google.
I was thinking about bringing pizzas.
That's a little bit, and that's not spread the idea.
I'm sorry, you think pizza's not that slow?
But I could do it at home.
I know, it was Steve-O, I believe, and then they had Shelley.
I'm bringing pizza, I don't want to bring pizza.
All right, well, what else will be tidy?
I was just when I asked you too, what do you try to do? Track down. Because now.
Well, you gotta really have a lot though, there's so many people.
I would think it would be a lot easier.
For legitimate tax, yeah, I don't know what law does require notice in the publication or something, that'd be nice. That's not.
I think they're supposed to.
Maybe a very small burrito, not like a long.
Yeah, a lot of times it's the laughing air, obviously, but whatever. They're legally within that circle.
Yeah.
That's the way the law's supposed to work.
Just the last month? The last month.
Set it in stone.
There you go. Man from the radio right here.
Well,
So what are you doing, Mr. Miller? How are you? Good to see you.
much to the superintendent, some of the that's the law.
This is trying to find out what they don't tell you is the real key.
And it's hard even in person, it's hard no matter what. There's that,
They want some
it's like what they asked for, what they got.
There's always new things in there, like today, the economic watch, 3 minutes. If you look at the line, it's like 0 happiness, 1 and 3.
Just like that. That's the way we like it.
They got money there. They tell me you don't have money.
You have money. I'm sorry, but I'm very pro-union, but I cannot fucking believe that they can negotiate for people who make $15 and think they'll do that.
It's hard to get people there.
You know, I don't understand where it falls down. Like, I don't understand who they're, they negotiate
Well,
with.
it's, I appreciate it's an entry-level job. I made $6,800 my first year, but it was an entry-level job and I moved up. But the difference with the counties, I got great health care. I've had 25 root canals because they didn't have any money. No dental insurance.
But I want everybody to come to order here. We've done very well so far. And just want you to know, we have had 21 members that was in attendance tonight. And during COVID, we were, online in Zoom. And somebody asked earlier about why I was taking attendance. I want you to know, these are great numbers. And coming back in again especially. I remember years ago, this table did not look like this, I know. And so now to see everyone here and around the world, you know, I feel really good about it. And I'm just happy that we haven't lost anyone too. So to me, it's just something that's very important for us to recognize how our members and how committed we have been. We have people that have been ill, but we also have people that, you know, are out tonight for various reasons and they've been excused. But I'm very proud of the membership and the way in which they have taken on the responsibility of the representation of their people. So with that, we're going to move forward for our last presentation of the evening to our district attorney, DA David Swords.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First and foremost, I'd like to thank your staff for the immense patience that was demonstrated over the last week and in assisting us to prepare for this evening's presentation. I'd also be remiss if I didn't extend my gratitude towards the county executive staff for all of the assistance that they've provided our office during what has been an incredibly difficult year, and the number of prosecutors and other specialists that have transitioned from the office. And I can't complete that without also thanking Comptroller Sue Rizzo for her guidance in assisting us in being able to demonstrate abilities for us to instantly replace some of those individuals that we've lost during this very difficult period of time. What is interesting when you sit here and you're listening to all of the leadership in the county, the one thing that I think you're left with is the incredible work that employees for Albany County are doing in their service to others in so many different capacities. And one of the things that I'm sitting there listening to is some amazing and aspirational endeavors that we've committed ourselves to in an effort to deliver the best Albany County for people. And I also understand and appreciate the fiscal constraints that everyone is operating under. So it is in that spirit that I present to you the issues that we're experiencing, the budget that we're proposing, and I would argue, at least at the beginning of my presentation, that while others have delivered an aspirational presentations for the future, what I'm delivering is a moral document that questions our present path as it relates to public safety in our county. And with that, let me just say that I know that there's been a lot of exchanges between our respective organizations as to information. I was asked to present some comprehensive analysis between several jurisdictions that share with Albany County its population. Those jurisdictions being Orange County, Orange County, Rockland County, as well as the County of Dutchess, all of whom have a population near or about or a little over Albany County. And I was asked to make inquiries to those offices to see what they do and perhaps see what they've proposed in terms of addressing all of the unfunded mandates that have been, that now must be borne on the shoulders of local legislators. And I understand why I was asked for those specific jurisdictions. I was asked that because, again, population density. But upon review, and I've provided some information here for you, what you will see is that not one of those jurisdictions even come close to Albany County as it relates to the volume of crime, specifically as it relates to the volume of violence, and specifically as it relates to the crimes involving violence and the use of handguns. Simply put, Albany County is more on par on per capita violence with Brooklyn and Staten Island than we are with our neighboring jurisdictions or any of the upstate communities. And that's where we find ourselves today. I never asked, I've been coming now, it's almost 2 decades that I've been sitting at this table or other tables in larger spaces in my time as district attorneys. And in that time, I've come as often as I can with what I call a status quo budget. We don't need anything, you know, if we need to suck it up this year, we're gonna tighten our belts and we're gonna do our best. ladies and gentlemen, I am coming today to you making a request that I understand is aggressive. But let me assure you that that aggressive budget that I've provided for you and the resources that I'm seeking should reflect the aggressiveness that we want to pursue offenders in our community and lay to waste the numbers of shootings and the other forms of violence that we are seeing in Albany County. I sit here today before you looking over a city, and I'll be quite frank for those of you who represent the city. I sit here before you in a city where we currently have 178 confirmed shootings, shots fired. 178, right? If that's not bad enough, I sit here before you knowing that we have 82 people that were shot, with 20 of those people being shot just in the last month. If not for the amazing trauma centers that you've discussed a little bit earlier with the coroner, that coroner would be a lot easier because our trauma center you can reach within a matter of minutes from locations where people are shot. I've received a lot of condemnation for my public statements in the last several weeks that are not apparently taken very well considering the political stakes that are occurring right now in our state. But I cannot, for the same reasons in 2004 when I decided to seek the position, I cannot sit by and watch the absolute devastation of black lives in our community being destroyed by the violence that is occurring in very specific pockets of our community. Let me just say that again. Whenever you hear statisticians or law enforcement speak about, well, you know, there's 33% increases in violence that is happening in Albany County. In comparison to the last 5 years, we're seeing 34% increases as it relates to shootings in Albany County. I want to repeat this. Those numbers don't reflect what's happening in Guilderland. They don't reflect what's happening in Cohoes. They don't reflect what's happening in Colony, the Capital District. They don't reflect what's happening in Clifton Park. This is happening in the smallest of pockets in the city of Albany. I've been asked over and over again in the last 20 years, what's happening? And I always tell people, if you want to forecast violence for over the next 5 years, ask yourself, what are you doing for 10-year-olds that live in the belly of the environment that has all of this violent engagement? Because if what you're doing right now is investing in those young people, what you're doing right now is that, then you know what? I wouldn't worry too much about 2027, 2026, 2025. But if what you're doing is what we're doing now, the numbers that I'm citing to you, and the proliferation of handguns that we're seeing right now that are coming from not only neighboring states, but we recover more ghost guns every month. It's going to make these numbers seem almost normal. And so we have a serious problem that's resulted as and listen, I will not in any avenue, I will not in any venue sit and discuss bail reform or throw numbers or this. It's a confluence of terrible public safety policies because it's not just bail reform or discovery reform. What we are seeing with Raise the Age is so alarming that I'm shocked that we're not pulling the fire alarm now. My request from this body is twofold. I am losing experienced, compassionate prosecutors every single month. 14 since the beginning of the year. 14. Now, I empathize with every single department that sat here and talked about the numbers of people that they're losing. I sympathize with them. And I guess the only difference the only argument that I can make without appearing as though I don't believe that there are other spaces in county service that need resources, I guess
The only difference is that we are the voices for victims of crime. Crime is absolutely out of control in New York State, but I've never seen anything like this. We have a revolving door of young people, and by the way, I have the numbers of our raise the age cases. So if you ever want to talk about people and numbers, I have them. What we are seeing happening with our young people, that many people believe are receiving a benefit by going to family court and being adjudicated in family court. If you believe that, I have a few people for you to talk to. 3 of them being young men that we've apprehended with loaded firearms on 3 separate occasions that we had to let go to family court that then were released, only to be shot in a mass shooting that took place in what we refer to as the student community at the end of August, 2 of whom are now paralyzed from the neck down. I don't have fantasies, I live in the real world. And the real world is listening to the forecasts, the economic and otherwise, and the challenges that the county is experiencing. I understand that what I've asked for is aggressive. As I said, it should reflect our aggressive posture towards this violence. I don't have the highest of expectations that my needs will be met, but what I am here to do today is to make a record that I asked. Bail reform takes the people that are committing crimes, strips the judges of having to consider whether they're dangerous or whether there's a threat to public safety, and as long as they can come back on the day and they're punctual, we'll let them out. Police were demoralized from having to catch the same people over and over again. Discovery keeps them out because now we're required to provide thousands of pieces of documents within 30 days. So let's let them out and let's keep the prosecutors from letting them back in. The focus of my ask is prosecutors with specializations that deal specifically with gun violence, prosecutors that now have to maintain the police personnel records, prosecutors right now that have to file extraditions to get people who are being tried, and when the jury goes, they leave town, and now we have to arrange for them to come back to Albany. So we need prosecutors to handle extraditions as well as manage police personnel records. There is a tragedy that happened in Buffalo. It was a mass shooting. Mass shooting. We had 2 here, right? We had one at the beginning of August, 6 people, one at the end of August, 5 people. In Buffalo, there was a mass shooting, and you know the facts, because I think this is a matter of public record. But that forced the leadership of this state to come and draft policies and draft laws that were going to directly respond to that. But we have 2 mass shootings, and we can't get relief in the areas that we need. But what did the state legislature come up with? Well, they came up with the Extreme Risk Protective Order, the ERPO, our red flag laws, right? And what was unique about this? What is unique about this is it now requires prosecutors and police, as well as teachers, or anyone who's working with anybody who happens to hear someone either utter a word of self-harm or threat. And you can basically go into Supreme Court, file documents, and have weapons, if there are any, removed from that person's presence. It's a swipe of a pen. But now we have prosecutors that are in criminal court. We have prosecutors that are in family court. And as a result of this another unfunded mandate, we now have to have prosecutors going to Supreme Court. I'm asking for ERPO prosecutors in my budget. Discovery is perhaps pragmatically the most offensive of all of these reforms. Why? Because we now have to provide more information than we've ever had to provide before. And the Office of the Albany County District Attorney is now the central repository of all criminal documentation, as well as all video surveillance, body cam equipment, and everything else. And in order to not burn out more prosecutors, we need people who will actually receive that material, organize that material, so it takes at least that burden off of the licensed attorney that has to sign their name to a certificate of compliance as they're turning everything over within 30 days. Within 30 days. So I'm looking for assistance on that end. I didn't hear anybody talk about this today, so I will, and I'll raise the alarm. The technological infrastructure in Albany County is on the verge of breaking in a matter of months, and I'll tell you who's going to break it. It's going to be the New York State Police. When they go full body cam, and every single one of their cases, they will be forwarding their video to my office. And we have no means of making sure that we keep that information and then to turn that over. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Information Services for being able to meet with us and talk to us and try to develop, short-term solutions. But this is the problem that's just over the horizon that will completely destroy the criminal justice practice in Albany County. And when I said the state police and body cams, I don't know how many of you have installed one, but I have a doorbell cam. There are also street cams in the city of Albany. Notice to all criminals, there's probably not a thing that you can do that isn't going to be captured somewhere, including probably your own video phone. So I appreciate those things that they do for us to help us, but we still are required to maintain all of this information and turn that over in a period of 30 days. I've said a lot. There's more to say. My hope is that I can submit not only some video, but additional material that can perhaps assist you in the very complicated decisions that you all have to make in the next several weeks.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, District Attorney. One of the things I sort of want to understand is that the disposition rate from your office, both for felony and misdemeanors, has basically fallen since 2017 to near halfway rates. But the budget's going up nearly double since the same time. So, now granted, I understand all the complications of bail reform in the sense, like, I understand the discovery stuff, I understand everything you're saying on the additional things, but we're seeing less cases come out of your office for more money, and a lot more money. And so what's causing that? Like, can you educate that?
Sure.
And I'm not even talking about compared populations, I'm saying strictly completed cases, because just to point out, this legislature, I believe, has backed almost every one of your requests that you've come in with for several years, especially to the Finance Committee, to give you that sort of leeway, but just never to the percentage of what you're asking now, so I'm just trying to really understand that.
Yep, and you are absolutely correct in asking that question. If you're looking for any data, 2022, 2021, and 2019, all of the last 3 years, nothing is normal. Because effectively March of 2020, the courts shut down, right? And the courts then reopened for very limited purposes. Limited purposes being arraignment of violent felons. No processing of local courts. In fact, just recently, we are now allowed to practice again in local courts, doing trials. And so what you are seeing in terms of output and numbers is not a reflection of what's actually happening in the office of the Albany County District Attorney. The Albany Police Department, the Colony Police Department did not stop making arrests. The obligation within 30 days to take all of the data and information that was provided to us for purposes of that arrest That didn't stop. So what we have right now is a significant inventory of crimes that have yet to really be processed, but cases that prosecutors are actively working on in order to preserve their time. What you are going to see for actually, not even 2022, because we just went back to normal in April. So you have 4 months that will not reflect a normal month where normal functions have resumed. Last Wednesday was the very first time that Albany County has its 3 grand juries back. We've been operating on a limited basis with 1 grand jury. All production numbers are down. But again, those numbers do not reflect the actual work that prosecutors are doing that are ongoing.
And I can understand, but so how are we going to understand if that, like, so, for example, I believe like about a year and a half ago, you came and requested 7 new ADAs.
Mm-hmm.
When were those filled and what progress did they do? And then what has that allowed you to do? What I'm really trying to figure out here is, and I understand there's nuances here, especially when we talk about crime and violence and things like that. It affects people on a very personal level. It affects people on a very intrinsic, guttural level, and I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if the Department of General Services or Public Works came in and said, we need money for 10 new roads, and the same amount of roads were paved, and we said why, we'd ask for extenuating circumstances and what's going on. You're asking for, I believe, a 23% increase in your budget compared to 2022, and that's on top of, I believe, probably 11% from the year before. So we're talking nearly, since 2017, nearly a doubling of the budget. How are we going to view if these extra monies are actually going to help the crime levels you're talking about? Because, if it's a backup in the judiciary, okay, then that's not really going to help us get there. If it's the bail reform laws, then that's not really going to help us get there to feel more safe. Where is this going? How are we going to see if this helps?
The way that we see whether or not this helps is based upon the same theory as applied by my colleague in Onondaga, which Onondaga is more reflective, although they have a higher population. We are closer as it relates to crimes. In Onondaga, the strategy that they've applied is bring on the prosecutors, but bring on additional supports, so that things like discovery are not things that are going to be bogged down by prosecutors who have to sort through things and spend 70% of their time actually doing clerical work, okay? That's one issue. We've never been full-staffed. We have never been fully staffed upon the receipt of your very gracious authorization from last year. As a matter of fact, the most frustrating thing for me and others in my position is consistently having to guess what impact these reforms are going to have and how do I shift and change my office to address those needs. We were deprived of that opportunity in 2020 because of COVID. We were deprived of that opportunity in 2021. In 2022, we came and looked at our own budget and we said, you know what, I think if I have to forecast and see what's coming, this is the best way for us to address this. We're going to have a number of criminal law associates. And these criminal law associates are going to then take on a lot of the discovery obligations. Well, guess what? My office is an office where I would have 15 applications for 1 vacancy. I am now hiring people with very little criminal justice backgrounds. And my concern is I'll be sitting here next year proposing we just get scarecrows to put them in the courtroom to pretend we have bodies there. I've never operated at full capacity. But here's the other thing that justifies my ask. 2004, we were trying to eradicate crime by 1 crack sale at a time. I don't remember the last time we prosecuted a drug case. Why? Because all we have are gun cases, possession cases, and shootings. And in addition to that, we're certainly providing much more technical support than we ever have before. Because this issue isn't only just occurring to me.
Right.
Our police departments that are short, that are hiring new people, they're picking up the phone and wondering, can I open up a shoebox and search that? And there's an ADA on the other end of that phone providing the most sound technical advice so that we are doing everything by the book. And so, when you ask, well, how do I justify, my ask for additional resources to the tune of 20%? I think over the course of the last 5 years, you could see the increase in certain areas of crime that reflect the need for us to be able to stand up to meet it.
So if I can ask one more, Madam Chair, and then I'll come later. So last year, 7% increase. What was your office able to accomplish in 2022 with that 7% increase that it wasn't in 2021?
What were we able to accomplish?
Differential, right? I understand what you were able to accomplish every year,
Yep.
right? There's a standard, but that extra money, what did it accomplish?
What it accomplishes is I would tell you that we do not have cases being dismissed, which is just as important as not losing cases at trial, right? What we have are people who are busier working in order to achieve and comply with the mandates that have been thrown upon us. And after assessing what we did then, is the reason I have enough gall to come and ask for additional resources.
Can we get those statistics? So for example, since 2017, the number of dismissals, the number of things you're able to do, just so we can compare it?
Sure.
And anything else that you would think that, to that point, that could be a form of metric, understanding the other complications. But I think that would be helpful to understand what we're dealing with, right? Dismissals, things like that.
The other metric is just the amount of work that we have to put into every single case now because of discovery reform.
Yep.
Discovery reform is by far the largest driver of our ask of everything. It's driving the ADAs out of the office.
Yep.
They don't want to do it anymore. And when you think about it, we did complete discovery. We always had an open file policy, but we had to provide everything to everyone in only 2% of our cases.
Yep.
Now I have to do it in 100% of our cases, and it's the lawyers that are having to do it. So when we're asking for intake and discovery liaisons, it's because we want to offload some of that work off the lawyers to them to do the work for them, so that the lawyers don't feel like I got to go take a job I don't really want to do elsewhere, but I want to have a life. Because they're literally working 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week, being clerks.
I've lost one person to the private sector, just one. Everyone else has gone some to the AG's office, some to state agencies. We have administrative law judges. And, it's not the same conversation. It's not the same conversation that we're having as they're departing. They're not coming to me and saying, listen, man, I got to go. I found a better opportunity. It's, I love this job, but I simply can't do it anymore. My concern is that we have other people who may seek those other opportunities. And like I said, I started off by saying this. I'll finish by saying this. You all didn't vote for anything that's coming down the pike. As a matter of fact, as I'm sitting there, there's a new law that was just signed into effective immediately as I'm sitting over here. But I do appreciate the fact that you have so much to wrestle with and different choices to make. And I will assist you in making that choice in any way that I can. And looking for metrics like dismissals is something we can provide for.
Thank you, I'm good for now, Madam Chair.
Mr. Bergdorf?
Dave, I was surprised by your description of the concentration of shootings being really, you can microanalyze it to certain areas. And the sheriff has had an increased presence in those areas. I also have great sympathy for you with the data and the body cams and the storage. I was on a couple of grand juries where they ran tape, and I can't imagine what it would be like to get, 1 million hours of body cam and catalog it and be able to pull it out. But is there anything we can do for you that helps you focus your resources? I mean, this sounds simplistic, with the Albany police and the sheriff, so that our collective criminal justice effort is more focused on the areas that need it the most? Or is that what's happening in an informal basis now?
I mean, I'll show you, and this is nothing that I can display, but, you know, this is just a week, right? And if you see it looks like a Doppler radar reading, right? These are the spots that we have shootings and homicides and shots fired, right? And the thing that is amazing to me, and it's literally, I mean, if I named the streets, everyone here would know them, right? It's confined to such a small location. I can't in good faith sit here and tell you about, like, what is it that police and prosecutors and all of us can do. It's gonna require three things, right? We have to collectively come together and, like, really analyze and do hearings and be able to talk about, like, these policies, right? With actual data, these policies. We have to do that and then advocate for changing those policies. That way, when we're playing tag, like, here I got you, you're frozen, right? What's happening now is I tag you and I go run around and tag someone else, he's gone in 2 seconds. So this never ends. My heart sank when, you know, a kid who we were trying to prosecute, make no mistake about it, we weren't there trying to lend him a hand. 3 separate occasions loaded firearms in the city of Albany, 3 separate occasions. Apprehended him, brought him to family court, made the best argument we thought we could make. They kept him in family court. He's paralyzed from the neck down. And I say to myself, so the policies aren't helping to do any kind of intervention, right? Because if the interventions were working and they weren't back out doing the same thing, I'd be like, oh my God, I've got to admit, this is working. And I wouldn't oppose these motions, right? But they're not. And the thing is I show you the cloud here and I say, okay, it's happening right here. Understand that there are kids that are also traumatized having to go to school, right? But the thing about this, it's not going to stay here. Anyone who's watching the news saw the news the other day where the 3rd young person with a weapon at Cross Gates Mall. It's going to come into shared spaces, right? And so the things that can be done, I would say, help us be more effective by working with information services to develop the actual technological architecture that's going to benefit not only my office, it would benefit the public defender's office, it would benefit the conflict defender's office, it would benefit the clerk who's responsible for storing a lot of this data. And so working and committing to get this county to create that infrastructure that is necessary is the other thing, but we just need the bodies.
And that's why our asks are so large, is we're having to be an IT department and a hall of records right now. Because we're asking for more money for the IT department to be able to store our stuff. And when cases are closed, we're supposed to ship them off to the clerk's office and they go to the hall of records. But there's no infrastructure for that. So our costs are gonna keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because we have to retain all this for 25 years. So even if we put it in the cloud, which is one solution that we've been talking to IT about, gets in the cloud, okay, here's your cost for the first year. Well, then the next year, and the next year, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger for 25 years.
I would tell you the last thing, and I apologize for continuing to be so verbose. If I would give you $2 million back in 4 years, if this body got together with the city common council and you took the $2 million and you just put it right in these blocks and you give 10-year-olds a shot to grow up normal without seeing violence, give them something to do after school, give parents some feeling of trust that letting their kid down the road to go play ball isn't going to get them shot, I'll give you $2 million back.
I have to say something. This is something that is quite insidious in my community. Okay? And I get to see it, I get to hear it, and you well know that I experienced it myself. But for me, the last point that you just made in regards to where the money might go or should go to save these kids has nothing to do with the courtroom. This is me now. This is just my personal opinion, okay? I get to see those kids who may not have somebody at home. I see something going to maybe Children, Youth, and Family Services. I see something going to mental health services, okay? I mean, I'm looking at so many kids right now that are suffering from so many other things. I see issues with early intervention, that those kids that are not getting those services at early intervention, okay, you know, they wind up showing up later on. Those mothers and those fathers that are on drugs, that have also poisoned the kids that they carried, and now they're on the streets, okay? So they have these developmental disabilities. So I'm not saying that you don't have a problem. I know that you do, but there are other services, because the same reason why we have the Accrued program, because we know that there are so many people that have these mental health issues. Same reason why we built supportive housing in North Albany, because of the fact that you have people who no longer can, you don't want them to stay in the shelter. They have to advance somewhere along the way. But those dollars have to come from somewhere. And I know we put a lot of emphasis on the number of people that are being shot. I know. I get to listen to some of those gunshots. I do. But this is something that we've talked about for years and years and years in regards to, you know, gun violence. But I just can't see taking all of this money and raising taxes for this one piece.
What is the one piece? I'm trying to.
No, what I'm trying to say is this. You know, if we put $2 million, we give you $2 million, how does that affect the property tax?
It raises it, every 1 million raises it by 1%.
So it raises it by 1%. I'm not saying that your need is not strong, but I'm looking at all of the people that's gonna come in front of us. I can still see the people that work in mental health and the issues that they have, even out there at the jail, those people, you know, that need help, okay? It's like, do we have the ability to put it all in this one pot and not look at all of the other places that, you know, where there is a need at the beginning instead of at the end?
Madam Chair, I would not be sitting here. There would be no need for prosecutors, be no need for police, if the resources were being devoted to the places that you speak. You asked this gentleman, what are the tax implications if we put all of this in one basket? I would ask for your team to meet with the Central Avenue bid, the Lark Street bid. I'd ask for you to meet with the malls, all of the businesses in Albany County. Because what I fear is going to happen, and this will be much worse, is you're not going to have sales tax at all, because people aren't going to go shopping at various places. We have businesses that are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars along Central Avenue, that corridor, every week, because of crime. People are feeling a certain way when they go to a regular store and the item that they've been accustomed to just picking up off of the shelf are locked up. Pharmacies closing and leaving because of crime. I mean, we could sit here and have a conversation about crime and the consequences of crime, but the reason why this location happens to be what I would say arid and are grounds that no seed can find purchase is because of violence. And if we're not doing something to effectively eradicate violence, meaning a different response from law enforcement, a complete prosecution, policies that make sense and policies that don't expand the footprint, these policies are forcing the expansion of the criminal justice footprint. Because that's what I'm here for today. without these policies. And if you look, and I'll provide you with the data, let's look at crime trends. You know, for the greatest pride that I feel is watching crime go down, shutting state prisons, more people getting treatment. That's been the model up until 2020. And now, what we have are young people going to the mall with loaded firearms and having mom pick them up.
And I hear what you're saying. Believe me, I do. But the one thing that I do know, gun violence, yes, is a huge issue. If my son hadn't had a gun in his hand, he wouldn't be in Graceland right now, okay? I understand that, all right? At the same time, too, I know these other kids that are suffering from so many other things that we realize that have to be fixed, too. And so, I just see more to this conversation than just law enforcement. And I'm not saying you don't need to have the ability to be able to do what you do, to put people away or so forth and so on. I mean, some people might think that you've painted a very gruesome picture. Well, it is gruesome, and I know that it is, because I know a lot of those young men that have wound up paralyzed, that have wound up in the cemetery, okay? I know their families, I know their grandmothers, I know their fathers, I know their sisters, I know their brothers, so forth and so on. But I also know the condition of the families too. And so we can't ignore that. And so, you know, just with that said, I'm not saying you don't need it, but I just have some questions in regards to why we would want to just pour all of this into one facet. And I'm going to stop now because I'm going to allow, I have some other people here that would like to speak. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate your personal message very much. If Albany County citizens could read one page, they should read page 206 of the budget, where Mr. Soares outlines the infuriating and disastrous consequences of state legislation when it comes to crime. Until the state laws change, the crime problem is not going to be resolved, and it doesn't matter how much money we throw to the DA's office. That's the hard reality. Until these state laws are changed, the crime problem is not going to be alleviated. One of the concerns I commend you, Mr. Soares, because you have been a leader in speaking up against these state laws at your own political peril, because it's Democrats you're speaking up against, and I appreciate that. But the reality is, you came to us before for big raises for people you say are leaving. And we know from the research, in 25% of the cases, people take jobs, retain jobs based on money. The rest are circumstances at work. Do they like their boss? Do they get along with their coworkers? Do they feel they're doing work that's making a difference? So you have a series of $10,000 raises in your budget that aren't going to keep people who don't want to be there, number one. And secondly, you're asking us for 17 new positions. And if you look next to the proposed line from County Executive McCoy, it's 0 in each of the 17 cases. You've had the discussion with the Chief Executive. He cares about public safety too. And in each case, he doesn't believe that these new positions are warranted, and neither do I. The reality is, it's a terrible situation we're in because of state legislation, and I appreciate the frustration. You see it firsthand every day. But we've had an opportunity in previous years. We've given those raises, and I was objected to them because it's going to be start a wave of raises, and that's exactly what happened in Albany County. We had one department after another coming before us with big raises.
How many of those raises were given out of my own budget that we redirected?
They were in all the agencies because you got the ball rolling. Now, I understand your need, all the work that's created by the state legislation. But we know until that legislation changed, the crime problem is not going to be better, and people are going to die.
And that's what I should say
So
to
why
victims
is the
of
county,
homicide cases?
why is the county executive, why is he wrong when he cares as much about public safety as you?
You are asking me to put myself in the mind of the county executive and do a comparative analysis about his compassion. I care. My compassion is rooted in the fact that this is my job. And I can't say what you just said to me to a victim or a family member who loses a child. I can't say that. I can't say, sorry, Mrs. Smith, until they change these laws, this is going to have to be acceptable. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable.
But you can't
It's,
tell.
it's even more unacceptable that it's happening to young black people. But I tell you this, the moment that there's a young man at the mall who's apprehended with a firearm, there's a 4-alarm fire. That's what's being captured everywhere, right? I didn't sit by in 2004 watching the same kids being arrested for terrible drug policies. I'm not sitting by here watching the same party that you've just said, I've taken political risks. Can't sit here, watch what's happening, the bloodshed. And I'm not even trying to overstate this. It's a fact. Can't sit here and watch it and say, oh boy, I understand the fiscal impact of a lot of these things, and last year, I can't say that. Here I am, I put forward the most aggressive budget that I can to help me be effective and to help me turn the tide of what's happening, because it's not just bad bail laws, it's having people in the office spending 70% of their time chasing mindless documents to turn over, documents that aren't used as evidence in a case or even a defense. That's what we're dealing with here.
You have no proof that
you
more money,
certainly-
giving more money to you is going to resolve the problem.
And you certainly can
can't-
take that position. Like I said, I'm here to create a record. You've created one.
Okay, can I just, I would like to hear from Mr. Pine, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. District Attorney, gun violence, I appreciate that you're focused so much on gun violence. It's something that impacts the community that I represent, the community that I live in. I want to make, and if there's $2 million, I want to say if there's $2 million that we can put towards something that's going to make a major impact in reducing gun violence, then I'm for it. But what I'm concerned, I want to make sure is that this proposal is going to be effective, that this is the best way that we can spend $2 million in reducing gun violence and making a real difference. And as you mentioned, those small, really pockets of areas within the city of Albany where this is occurring. I'm curious because you also talked about, I think it's been mentioned, Chairwoman mentioned it, this is the court system, the law enforcement is part of the solution, important part, but it's not the entire part of addressing gun violence. And you mentioned, if we're not investing now in changing the lives of 10-year-olds in our city now, then we're going to continue to have this problem. So I'm curious from your experience, what you see as the other areas that we really need to invest in, such as in those lives of 10-year-olds right now that would make an impact down the road in reducing gun violence?
It's a very good question. Thank you for that question. Where you need to invest? We happen to have a jewel in Albany County that is one of those diamonds in the rough. That's called the Glenmont Job Corps. That diamond has been abandoned. I don't even think there's pavement there anymore. It's just been ignored. If you attend the Glenmont Job Corps, you get vocational training. You get to be plucked out of your environment, and you're going into a place where you're going to be around adults, you're going to be around other young people, but you're actually going to get taught something, right? You're going to get taught a trade, What I don't understand is how anyone rational and sane can think that you take a 16-year-old who's just been apprehended with a loaded firearm. He is sent to family court because you know what? He was in possession of it, but he didn't display it. See, because if he displays it, then we can take the case and prosecute that individual as an adolescent offender. If we can't establish that he displayed it, then that kid goes to family court, and in family court, I don't know what is put in place. The fact that the same kid is caught again, and recidivism, and I have all of that I'll provide you for, specifically as it relates to raise the age, demonstrates to me that the first time didn't work. And how can it possibly, when the justification for raise the age was that the brain isn't really fully formed? So how can we expect an undeveloped, fully formed brain to understand the consequences of being apprehended with a firearm and then being put right back into the same environment with the same friends? reason I mention those two things is I would feel a whole lot better if that kid wasn't going to prison, that kid wasn't going to some kind of confinement. I would feel a whole lot better if someone sent that kid to Job Corps, where he's a couple of miles down the road, but he may as well be on planet Mars because he's not on Second and Judd. Those investments need to be made. Those opportunities need to be made. But this idea that you can remove a kid from an environment for 24 hours, do something with him, send him to a couple of classes, and put him right back out on the block with his people, and the same thing isn't going to happen, is absurd. And the thing is, this experiment is the costliest experiment. You can look at my $2 million, but ask yourself, is 33% more people shot a better investment because we want to take a risk? And by the way, it's one thing to say that it's worth the risk. It's another thing to say, I'm living in the environment where I'm taking the risk with everyone, right? So I got other ideas of young people, and I'm glad you asked that question because I am here advocating for my office, but in 20 years, you've never heard me say that courts, prosecutors, police are the answers. Never heard me say I'm the first DA's office in the state to bring restorative justice. I practice it. I have people who we've apprehended with guns that have gone through our restorative justice model. We have a felony youth diversion board with some of the best people. Those are the best moments on my job when I see a young person who's given a shot, given some direction, can pick up a phone and call somebody to ask a question when they come across an obstacle and have that person direct them out of that. The greatest feeling in the world. Greatest feeling in the world. I've never had that feeling sending someone to prison.
Can Mr. Peters and Mr. Burgess, please?
Sure. So I sort of just want to separate a couple things, because Mr. Grimm said a lot of things that I sort of have been thinking, which in itself is a rare accomplishment.
The thinking or that Mr. Grimm said them?
But perhaps from a different way. And my fear isn't, if you told me today and showed me demonstrable evidence that you give me $2 million, we're taking guns off the street, there's less violence, there's this, I'd sign the check. What I'm fearful of is that we're throwing money at a wall, and if the issue is that you can't keep people in jail because of bail reform, that the courts are backed up, then all those things, then giving you more money to this level is not going to fix that. And I'm not kidding. And I'm willing to work with you over the coming weeks to try to get demonstrable evidence of where this is going to go and how that's going to help. But I can say right now, you've made the case, or you've made a case for what the problems with bail reform are and stuff like that. Okay, and you've made the case that violent crime harms lots of people. I'm with you. I represent Lark Street. Like, I've seen the issues. I have, in the day job, I work all over Central Avenue, downtown, everywhere. I was the mayor's chief of staff. I had to go to all these places. What I'm seeing, though, with this type of investment is I'm not seeing a result-oriented model that says, here's what we're going to do and here's where we're going to go. You're showing me systematic failures that money won't necessarily solve because it's systematic failures. And to my colleague, Chair Willingham, and my colleague Sam Fine, I would in fact like to say, okay, one of the main issues for me on Lark Street is that we have the methadone clinic on Central, we have Albany Med, the psych center, and the park in a triangle, and it's not shootings that are happening, it's that officers don't want to deal with misdemeanors and stuff like that, they use bail reform as that, but they're missing some points of orders of protection, things like that. There's a whole host of ways, and they're saying that there's a backup at the court, so those people are not getting processed even if there is remand as an option. Well then, the talk shouldn't be about more folks in your office per se, but establishing a mental health court and helping a pathway through that to get that off the docket. Those are the things I want to see or hear about.
Well, those are the things that are in place. I want to interrupt you, but I don't want anybody walking away with a different impression of what I'm saying. Perhaps it's the way that I've engaged here, but I don't think I've ever said $2 million is going to help me get guns off the street. Because you know what? You can get a gun going across state lines. You can sit at home and order one from the comfort of your own home and have a friend with a drill that'll make that untraceable ghost gun an operational gun. You can actually use a photocopier and get a 3D printed gun and use that. I didn't say anything about getting guns off the street. What I'm saying is we need people to get the people who use guns off the street.
And I understand.
And, well, let me just finish. I put more, right? We have diversion programs in the office. Again, I have young people that a lot of people wouldn't take risks on, right? I devote an investigator to do a very intensive workup to make sure that the person who we're about to take a chance on, who the community's about to take a chance on, is a person who will probably succeed and not let anyone down or compromise the integrity of the program. When you have devoted prosecutors who can take their time and have a lower caseload, because I don't know if you had your public defender here or not yet, but by law, they're required to manage a very small caseload. That law doesn't apply to us. The more prosecutors we can have on staff that are focused on the very specific people, we're able to more effectively get them out of the community. And unfortunately, it's not a task that, quite honestly, you want to talk about in glowing ways, but what you're sensing in my voice is a bit of frustration. $2 million buys you more prosecutors, $2 million buys you more support staff, $2 million buys you more time and attention to deal with the people that are really causing the issues in our community.
And I understand that, and what I think this body is asking is, what is the end goal? And I'm not talking about in generic talking points. I'm saying the only data we have is the dispositions. That's all we've been saying on how your office has been dealing with that outside of your general terms. And this body needs some type of information to see what you're gonna take taxpayer money on and accomplish with such an increase. And I know and I'm gonna say that we can take that offline and work together on that. And I'm pleased to look at the different levels and where we can go with that. But in order to make such an investment, there needs to be something that holds your office accountable to say, okay, we just increased your budget by 23%. What are those 23% increase getting us? And I'm talking about not in goals, in concrete terms. And that's what I think we need to learn. And I understand you can't answer that right now because we have a lot to work on, and we're gonna work on that, and I appreciate you getting us that info, but that's what I think this body is looking for.
Okay, I have to give Mr. Bergdorf, who's been very patient, an opportunity.
Yeah, no, that's okay, because I have sort of a different viewpoint than Matt and even Mark. Sounds like a lot of people around this table want to give up. The problem is so big that the criminal justice system can't deal with. Well, you know something? When we had a problem with 911, had no problem going to the state legislature, getting a bill passed to come up with $4 million a year to finance 911. Has Craig Apple lost 178 people in a year because the cellular infrastructure isn't good enough? No. We determined it was a problem. It was public safety. The first responsibility of this county is public safety. When the City of Albany Police Department is down 80 officers, Craig Apple stepped up and took his resources from all over the rest of the county, spent $1 million in overtime, and we're now going to be asked to buy 4 new cars for the Sheriff's Department because of the Albany County, all the tours in Albany County. So I don't want to hear that for the lack of money, we're not going to make an investment in public safety. We can spend $4 million on the stage program, and that's a good thing to create jobs. And we can spend $3 million on the community, Albany Community Investment Program, and that's good because that creates jobs. But the people in my neighborhood don't want to come to Albany anymore because it's dangerous. It's dangerous. I know people who have given up their membership in the Fort Orange Club because they don't want to go down there to eat at night. We have to make a stand somewhere. Now, I don't know that legal salaries is a hill to die on, but I know that we have to give the district attorney some sort of assistance to step up to at least his basic legal requirements on discovery, on computers, and all the mandates that he has. We have that responsibility. And we can't say, and you know something, anybody who wants to get up and have a press conference tomorrow with David, I'll be there. I think Mark will be there. I think Frank will be there, and say, do away with raise the age and do away with bail reform because we need it, because our city is dying. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to challenge the status quo. But that's the real problem. But I, for one, want to see the sheriff's office get the tools they need. I want to see the district attorney's office get the tools they need. And it may not be a $2 million ask, but we've got to be able to help them in some way possible to deal with the mandates that he has, so that cases aren't thrown out, so we don't get headlines like on the New York Post where somebody is arrested 65 times and then finally commits a murder because of turnstile justice, because the first 64 were thrown out, or the probation department couldn't find him to bring him to his next court date. We have to support the criminal justice system that we have, and that includes probation as well.
I don't think,
I'm sorry,
I'm
I just,
and I hear what you're saying. I think my point and Mr. Fine's point here is that this is not the answer. Law enforcement is not the answer. When he asked the question of the district attorney, what other thoughts that he had in regards to the needs of the people that he has to serve, and we all have to serve too. Law enforcement is not the sole answer. I don't feel that right now, I would not agree with the total thing. I think we do need to take an opportunity to go back and look at, what you have offered here. Before we say, no, okay? But right now, tonight, I think this bears just a little bit more thought. Going away from this, we could talk about this and debate it forever. And I think that you've done a fantastic job, and that there has been a lot that has been thrown at us. A lot of these different policies that have been put in place are dependent upon what was happening in New York City. And so it hasn't been a good fit for us up here, okay? And that's some things that a lot of people don't understand and realize, okay? Because there hasn't been enough, and I don't want to use the word investigation, but people have not researched how all these laws came about. A lot of these laws came about because of New York City. And so, all I'm saying is this right now, as we close this out, okay, that I think that we are gonna have to go back and maybe talk about this and think about this. And, everybody has a right to their opinion as to what they believe the answers are. I just personally don't believe that law enforcement, and I'm gonna say this one word, is the answer. That's all. Mr. Clay, I'm sorry.
I just have one question, may I?
Certainly.
David, how many people did you lose last year? Somebody tossed out a figure, 178 or something, how many?
We had 14 people leave us just this year.
14 prosecutors?
Yeah.
Well, I agree with the chairwoman, I agree with Matt and those that, but I think that we have to look at this very carefully. This cannot continue the way it's gone with these shootings and so on in Albany. Now, that's not, the solution is maybe is not, and I'm biased because I come out of law enforcement, So the answer is perhaps not law enforcement, but it's a big piece of the answer. And I think Matt has a good idea to sit down with you and discuss this and the chairwoman and come up with a viable solution. Right now, I sit here in support of your request. I gotta tell you that, because I deal with a lot of people. I'm up on the hill every single day. I go to a church that represents some 1,300 people. They are predominantly black people, and I tell you, this kind of thing just cannot continue. I mean, we're at the point of using retired troopers and myself to carry firearms in the church because we're so concerned. This cannot be. This cannot continue. We've got to do an analysis of this, and Matt, I appreciate your concern, and the Madam Chair Lady, but I'm in support of your request. Let's figure out a way that we can give you some relief, because this. I mean, I deal with people that are frustrated.
I'm here for the discussion. Again, I'm not, well, as I sit back there and I'm listening, and I apologize to all the folks who continue to hear me talk, but there's a good feeling I got listening to the great things that are happening. I understand your challenge. I also appreciate the fact that when I've called, I've been able to get hold of the chairman, I've been able to get a hold of people here to have these conversations. So this isn't the first conversation, and I'm glad that it isn't the last. This is our challenge. This is our challenge of our generation right now, in this moment, in this space, and we're up to the challenge. We will reach out. We will get as much data as you need in order to make the decision that you eventually make. I wouldn't want you to make it, blindly. We will do that. But I really thank you for the audience that you've provided. I'm a Red Sox fan, so the fact that you all are.
101.
I am too.
Me too.
Thank you.
And just a brief statement that the chairman is like, and Paul, only in response to you, because you didn't ask the DA a question, you more just made an assessment of all our opinions, which I don't think was accurate, so I'm just gonna respond to that a little bit by saying.
That's fine, that's fair.
The comments you've had here is not that we're blind to what's going on, it's whether or not this is the most effective way to attack it in its complete way. And in the same way that I asked economic development to give me a metric on, are you successfully hiring Albany County residents? And in the same way that I asked when the sheriff goes out on the roads and I ask, how many arrests did you help do in the city of Albany for money spent and giving those numbers? That's the same thing I'd ask of the DA, who says, giving us this money is going to help us get X. And so if that's a solution, then we need a metric for that. And I think we're all committed to that, because I think there's not one person, either side of the aisle, who is not frustrated and terrified of the gun violence we're seeing. I live in downtown Albany, I represent it. There have been shootings and stabbings within a block of my house. I live there, it's in my house. I've not given up on my city. And so I want to say that this is based on what's going to work, and not just letting fear decide on something and throwing money at it. I just want to see a metric. And I think that's where a lot of folks are coming, because if this is a mix where the DA needs some more assistance, but we also have to invest in job training, we have to invest in more mental health support and mental health things, then that is a total thing.
Okay,
And
so
that's
wait, no. This is what because I'm gonna shut this down. And I am gonna call, for a motion to adjourn, but before I do that, if you think about how we sat here and we discussed an issue such as this, how calmly, as far as I'm concerned.
Except for me.
I gave you too many M&Ms, that's my
Please listen at what I'm saying. We all have different views, but we all have the same goal in mind, and that is to make Albany County and the city of Albany and our communities a better place and a safe place to live. And what I see on everybody's face is that we can go away with something, with some thoughts now, to be able to decide what we're going to do. And so for that, I have to say personally, I've never been proud to be a member of such a group as this to be able to have this talk and this discussion as freely as we have, and feel that nobody is going away thinking ill of each other. And it's just too bad that that isn't being projected into our community. So I just want to thank everybody, for all of your comments and the discussion that we have had. I thank you for staying, everybody that is here. And so I am going to call right now for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Now that the motion is over, I'd like to be a part of whatever the follow-up to this is.